Gas-powered lawn and garden equipment have some of the most polluting engines on the market. Making the switch to battery-powered equipment is healthier for you and the environment. In California, it's illegal to put batteries in your trash or recycling bins because they can and do cause fires, which endanger workers and cause costly damage to equipment. Instead, batteries must be taken to a designated location for proper recycling, so we're making it even more convenient to do the right thing. You can now bring any lawn and garden equipment battery that's 300 watt-hours or less to this conveniently located site. Your batteries will be reused if possible, or if not, recycled into something new. And the best part? It's free. Bring your unwanted lawn and garden equipment batteries to this convenient facility today and let us handle the rest. Funded by a grant from Cal Recycle.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips, and I'm not seeing any movement. We also did not receive any general written correspondence, so I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair House.
Okay, thank you. So, approval of the minutes of the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of August 28th, 2024.
So moved.
Motion by Uli, second by Butler. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Wait, we have
Comments.
comments.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair.
You know how I like to keep things on.
Yeah. There was just one thing on the, it was the project on Chapala Street, and where we were talking about, let's see, which one was it? There was a discussion about possibly moving the historic element to the front. I believe what we said was that some commissioners believe that relocating the wall to incorporate into the entry of the building would be a benefit. I guess I would propose to change that to just say commissioners suggested studying that possibility. I think Commissioner Uli, you were...
Study it.
Yeah, to study it, but not, it was an interesting idea to study, basically.
And which project was this?
This is the one on Chapala with the little historic wall
Where's the bill?
of the old, yeah.
Okay, all right.
And we talked about keeping it
Oh,
in
this is the meeting
place.
where I was absent, I guess.
Oh,
Yeah.
so does that sound?
That's consistent.
Okay, thank you. Other
Thank
than that,
you.
I have no other comments.
Roll call vote on that.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Vice Chair House.
Abstain.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Is this new that we're doing approval of minutes of consent meetings?
From last.
Yes,
from last
it is a new procedure that we still ratify the motions the day of, so the applicants aren't held up for their 10-day appeal period, but then we bring them back to review the minutes.
Okay, so need a motion for approval of the minutes of the Historic Landmarks Commission consent meeting of August 28, 2024.
So
Motion.
moved.
Okay, Uli Butler again. Are there any comments on those?
I have a
Commissioner
comment.
Lenvik.
I find it interesting that we vote on something that we've not been attendant to. I mean, how can I attest to the fact that those,
Don't ask me.
pardon me.
Through the chair to Commissioner Lindvik, yes, it's a little difficult for the rest of the commission to weigh in on what was said at a meeting
Yeah.
in which they weren't in attendance, so we're largely relying on the consent reviewers to make any necessary edits. It's a procedure change that occurred because of some recent incidences, so I understand that it seems a bit superfluous.
So there. And once again, I was absent from that meeting, so is that chaired by Commissioner Grumbine?
Yes.
Okay. And he's not here today to weigh in, but
Yes, Chair House?
yes?
Just to add to that, as we're trying to find ways to be more clear and less confusing, I find this to be very confusing. So whatever it was that caused the change, I think it would be worth looking at because I find this to be not working very well.
Understood. I can bring that feedback back to our
It had to be the Brown
supervisors.
Act.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindvik,
Abstain.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Vice Chair House.
Abstain.
Motion passes.
Okay, so staff, you want to discuss the consent calendar of September 11th then?
Thank you, Vice Chair House. Item A was 1708 Paterna Road, which received project design approval and final approval with findings. Item B was 317 Loma Vista Ave, which received project design approval and final approval with the condition to replace the pine tree with a black acacia, 24-inch box size with auto irrigation and 21-gallon emitters per hour, and findings. Item C was 527 State Street, which received project design approval with the following conditions: return with close-up pictures and detailed drawings of the existing windows and proposed window details side by side, including the configuration of the proposed windows. The applicant should select the window that most closely matches the existing windows. 2, return with the color choice for the windows. And 3, the commission supports replacement of the bathroom windows if included for final approval. And then the following findings. And then 2151 Mission Ridge Road was continued 4 weeks with the comment to return with detailed drawings of the chimney and plaster grills, including sections and construction drawings.
Okay, so,
And just to clarify, since there's been some confusion on the consent minutes, you're just ratifying the motions today. If there are any issues with the actual text of the minutes, that will be reviewed at the next hearing, and I would urge commissioners, Vice Chair House and Commissioner McClure would be the best people to kind of make
are
those
there any
edits.
questions on today's consent calendar?
Motion to ratify the consent calendar.
Motion by Uli and second by
Second.
Butler. May we have a
We're
roll
getting
call
our
vote?
money's worth today.
Yeah. We're earning our $1.38.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Lindvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we'll move on to item E on general business announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals.
No announcements from staff at this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item F, subcommittee.
Commissioner Uli has an announcement. Or we've asked him to make one.
A little too quick.
Yeah, I know it, sorry.
Thanks for the prompting. As you know, for the St. Paul's AME Church that we worked on a year or so ago for city landmark status, the State Historic Preservation Office has indicated to us that the nomination for the National Register has been advanced to the State Historic Commission for adoption. But what's interesting to point out is that it was included in a multiple property document and context study of the importance of the Black community's contribution to the development of California. So what it suggests is that this little church in Santa Barbara has a state importance context because they picked it out of all the buildings that were available to submit. So that should go to the State Historic Commission in November, which is a big deal, and we're delighted about it.
Very good news indeed.
I don't know if you wanted to add anything or.
Anybody else have any
Chair
comments?
House. Just to constantly be bringing this up, the idea of the Department of Historic Preservation. I was happy to see, it was on the minutes from last time, but I just want to keep bringing that up so it doesn't just sort of fall away. I know that, I believe that staff is looking at that. That was reported last time, but I look forward to hearing more about that.
Any news on that front?
So Ellen has been back in the office for a short time, and I think we're going to have to probably have conversations with probably Cass and decide what priorities need to be made that are not being served now, and what changes need to be made, and then go from there. So I think that's a directive coming from Ellen, who, coming back from 5 months of maternity leave, is catching up.
Yeah,
So,
understandable. So please keep us posted.
okay.
Are there any subcommittee reports? It is not up here, so. Commissioner Landvik.
Yeah, there's nothing to report on the State Street Advisory Committee as such, although the staff will be making a presentation to the city council on the 17th, if I recall. And at that meeting, they will indicate where they are with the current scheme and what their plans for moving it ahead are.
Yeah.
So we know nothing as a committee, and we're going to have to wait till we hear at the council level what's going on.
I think we did get a memo about that emailed to
Yes.
us, and I guess any HLC members could show up and speak at public comment. So
Yes.
if anybody wanted to do that. Okay, if that's it for subcommittee reports, we'll move on to item 1. We'll get a training.
Thank you. As you all know, for our
Please introduce yourself.
Nicole Hernandez, architectural historian. As you all know, for our certified local government status, all of you need a training each year. We haven't done that many this year, and it has to be done by the end of September. So I thought I'd bring a training that I just presented last night to AIA's Women in Architecture group that they asked me to do on highlighting some of Santa Barbara's modern architecture. So almost all these buildings, except for one or two, have been designated or found historic, and some even as landmarks during my tenure here over the past 12 years. So some of you have seen a lot of them, and some of you have seen some, but here they are all together.
That looks like a picture of historic Formica.
Right, just something fun to start it off. So I'm kind of go chronologically from some of the earliest signs of modernism on our streetscapes, and this is one of the earliest examples I've seen because it's in the Prairie style, constructed in 1909, sitting at 1515 Santa Barbara Street. The Prairie style character-defining features are really, you start to see this flat roof and the really wide overhanging eave with the beautiful geometric designs underneath, and the stark walls with the bands of windows. And many of you know the Prairie style really was an American indigenous architectural style, and also one of the most short-lived, and considered the beginning of modern architecture, developed in the 20th century in Chicago, Illinois, with Frank Lloyd Wright and group of architects there. It didn't really come very far out of the Midwest, so it's rare to see examples of this on the West Coast, and especially, I think this is one of the only ones in Santa Barbara. And it really died out about 1915, right before World War I. So again, constantly, it makes it a really rare style for Santa Barbara and a unique part of our collection of modern style houses. And just to give a contemporary example of what was popular in the early 1900s was the late Queen Anne Free Classics and the early Craftsman's, which had really just more of the steep roofs and the shingled walls and the ornament under the eaves. which makes buildings like this one such a stark contrast, and see how we are moving away from these styles. One of the other oldest ones was one we just designated last year, which is this one built in 1912 to 1915 in the successionist style, which is a style that was so popular, as many of you remember, in Vienna, Europe. And it was just starting to become popular in Santa Barbara at this time. The secessionist movement really started from modern artists and architects in Vienna who broke away from the conservative Academy of Arts and the art schools and remained so welded to old-fashioned styles of academic art. It was formed in 1897 by Gustav Klimt, who most of you know his beautiful artwork. And it was the most influential breakaway by publishing its own periodicals to promote its wider ideas. The secessionist movement, the iconic building was this one by Ulbrich in 1897-98, where you start to see the embracing of geometric forms. And as the movement progressed, we really see these planar forms that inspire modern movements in architecture, including the Bauhaus movement and the International movement or the Art Deco movement. And the Viennese succession group was really strong until 1939 when the Nazis dissolved the group altogether. So this influence we see on the house that we just saw, in the really flat roof, again, stripped of all ornament and just really highlighting the windows and the depths of the walls and kind of just the form in itself. And this building was where we had the lecture last night, so there's a little more on this. The owner invited the AIA group to come and have the lecture in his house, and framing the modernism conversation. And here it is this bare bones and the masons who created the buildings and architecture, and not architecture, but the beautiful stone walls. And here it is just after construction, like very stark on the Riviera there. And here you see those beautiful capstone walls being completed, and some of the early photos of the building when families had just moved in. So following that, but just in the same almost time, in 1915, Lockwood de Forest designed this very similar stark modernist building. Lockwood de Forest was an American painter and interior designer and furniture designer. His son is also a very important landscape architect in Santa Barbara. And he was a key figure in the aesthetic movement. And he really also introduced the East Indian craft to the buildings. And he designed this stark building to highlight this really ornate balcony that he imported from East India. So the simple design that he created just was there to really highlight this beautiful ornament, but really take some of those school of thoughts from the successionists that we saw earlier. Those three examples are really like all you sort of see before the late 1900s and 20s come along, where Santa Barbara really turned all our focus, including all our planning efforts, to the Mediterranean and Spanish colonial revivals. So you don't really see much outside of those two styles until you get up to 1937, and we start to see the streamlined moderne come into play, and we even see architects like Reginald Johnson moving into more modern realm of architecture. As most of you know, Reginald Johnson, completely one of the most regarded in the Spanish colonial revival style, but also in other classical styles, really moved seamlessly into helping our little post office fit into Santa Barbara, but put on these really beautiful Art Deco elements with the bas-relief and the chevrons and the little details that he created there. The Streamlined Moderne really had that horizontality, so he created those flatter roofs, the machine aesthetic, that kind of followed mass production and functional efficiency, and came again from the Bauhaus movement in Germany. And as that world was transitioning from those roaring 20s into the more self-discipline of the Depression, we often see more of these designs after industrial designs rather than high ornate designs. And here is another one of, I just love this little Art Deco building down at the beach at 210 West Younnan Alley that really highlights some of these streamlined modern features, including the smooth surfaces, the curved corners, and the emphasis on the horizontal lines that are characteristic of the modern machine age. You can see it has a little Santa Barbara touch with the terracotta coping on the top. But we have just a little more on that the Streamline Moderne was really promoted by the Chicago's World Fair, the New York World Fair, and the San Francisco World Fair of the 1930s. And if you go to, well, as Steve showed us in some of his photographs, if you go to LA, and they have some really stunning examples of Art Deco and Streamline Moderne, as so does San Francisco, for that matter, a little bit more than Santa Barbara did at that time. And we do have another 1930s Streamline Moderne, 1939, the little dairy that we love so much on Milpas. It also has the Streamline Moderne features with the diagonal entrance, the swooping rounded arch with and the delineated columns and the glass block. And the stepped massing, all are Art Deco or Streamline Moderne features that Alex D'Alfonso used in his design. And he like Reginald Johnson, transformed from starting in a more Spanish colonial revival style to moving into this style. And one more Streamline Moderne building that we could not ignore because it's magnificent on State Street and designed by Kem Weber. A lot of Streamline Moderne was designed by industrial designers rather than architects, and Kem Weber is an example of that. Kem Weber was a really internationally famous furniture designer, and these are some of his pieces that he designed. He actually moved to Santa Barbara in 1918, and he had a design studio in the Covarrubias Adobe and taught classes at the Santa Barbara School of the Arts, which was up where the Alacama Theater is, in the Presidio. And then he went to LA and worked for some really prestigious furniture stores, had his own firm, and then came back to retire in Santa Barbara, which is why we have this beautiful late Streamline Moderne example that he did, complete with the curved walls made out of concrete, the swooping curved awning, the really wide overhanging awning, the iconic text on the top. And this actually, corners at diagonals as you go down the storefront as well. And as we move into the 1950s, we really have to bring in our lovely Luda Maria Riggs, a fellow AIA. She really also started in the Spanish colonial revival style, but after World War II really turned toward the mid-century style. The mid-century modern was started under Frank Lloyd Wright's principles of organic architecture combined with the elements reflected in the international and Bauhaus movements. It was more organic in form and less formal than the international style, and we had two incredible architects in Los Angeles helping define this in California style, which were Rudolf Schindler and Richard Neutsche, both who had passed through Frank Lloyd Wright's office and brought this styles where most significantly known for is these sheer walls of glass that bring the outdoors in, and the really stylized flat or angled roofs and lack of any ornament. You can see Luda designed this little building on East Arriaga. The city council designated it a landmark. It's a hard building to photograph now, but it set way back on the lot with a real woodsy setting, so that glass wall really feels like it's bringing the woods into the city. And this is another one of Luda Maria Riggs' designs, designed in 1955. And here she really plays with creating the privacy on one side of the building with the huge blocks of rectangular stucco and the little narrow ribbons of glass above. And then as you turn towards the other side of the building, you get the sheer wall of glass, bringing this nature into the house. And she played with these huge beams streaming them right through the wall of glass into the beautiful wide overhanging eaves. Really just playing on the simplicity and bringing that outside in. And we also looked at this building maybe a year ago, that by Paul Green. It also kind of tucked into the hill in San Roque, but also has these sheer walls of glass, the angled roof, and it has these geometric beams going right through that wall of glass into the wide overhanging eave as well. Some embracing that mid-century modern style. I always have to bring up my little heartbreak, which is our beautiful Neutra building that we were so lucky to have, that really was so iconic of his work, with these really horizontal lines, this sheer wall of glass, it burned in 2021, which I was so heartbroken with. I took these photos before it happened. It's the only building I've had in my time burned to the ground that's really significant. But we are lucky enough to have I was telling the group last night that if you want to see a great Richard Neutra house and tour it, there is a house museum in LA, built in 1932, that is a national landmark. And we also have one other little Neutra building that's a structure of merit here in Santa Barbara, constructed in 1959. He used that same play that Luda Riggs did with the stucco on the more public side of the building to create privacy with small lines of glass. And then as you go to the other side, you have a wall of glass. He, too, incorporated a little Santa Barbara with that terracotta roof, which I think, if you remember from the designation, was original on his plans. We all thought it was so strange that he would use that, but he had it on the original plans. And I think we all loved this building coming through with the Thornton Ladd House. Again, great play on glass and stucco with the vertical lines, piers on the exterior. I just love how he used the more play of the interior and exterior, using the terrazzo floor that came right through the wall of glass to this edging he put around all the edge of the house. And you can see it here too. Just really delicate details that he used in his work. And we're really lucky to have one of his pieces. Here he is. A picture of him and the house when it was first designed. And here's some of his other work. I think, if you remember, he did this one down in Newport Beach, the Stuffed Shirt Restaurant. He did the Norton Simon Museum and the church in Laverne that was featured in the movie The Graduate. That's where a lot of people recognize it. And this was just built 1 year later by our local architects, Peter Edwards and John Pittman. And you can really see the influence, I think, of Ladd's house in this one, with the beams coming out onto the outside. And this was the little modern building tucked behind the big estate that we designated as a landmark a few years ago. The front building's a Spanish colonial revival, and this was the little studio that we found to be just as important in the part of the landmark as the main building. And you can also see here, they use these monochromatic walls of brick to sort of define the privacy spaces. And then we have this mid-century modern building at 227 East Arriaga. It's a structure merit designed by our local architect, Robert Inglehoyt. He really played with the monochromatic brick. And, the highlight of this is this beautiful, geometric steeple that so greatly contrasts with these flat lines that he created. And in 1958. And I feel like we can see so many of those great features that we saw in all the other mid-century modern buildings with the monochromatic stone or brick or concrete work here in the mid-century modern doctor's office that was designed for Dr. McMillan's family medical office for the underrepresented people in Santa Barbara. And we focused a lot on Dr. McMillan in this group, but we all know he was also not only the first Black doctor in Santa Barbara, but also a real leader of the civil rights movement, and headed breaking housing discrimination as well as workforce discrimination. And then Another example of mid-century modern is we do have a great example with the motor hotels. All across the country, motor hotels were having such an iconic force on our country's landscape, not only with their play on different shapes. This one has like the diagonal cuts of the balcony, the pierced screen walls, as well as the iconic fonts that they used. And this was the height of road trips, and these were popping up all over. And this one is a structure merit up on State Street and East Arriaga Street. So that pretty much concludes my presentation on our modernism in a nutshell that we have in Santa Barbara. And I think what I find most is people are surprised we have any at all. So we do, and I think that we should be really proud of our repertoire.
Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Anybody have any questions?
I have a comment.
Comment then.
Thank you. That was a nice review. It's David Gebhardt, who did so much to focus national attention on the Spanish colonial revival aspects of Santa Barbara. It's my understanding was also critical in collecting some of the most important archives of modern architecture in Southern California that are here in Santa Barbara. So it's one more indication of what a rich heritage of the history of architecture is in Santa Barbara, both in buildings and in archives.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, that booklet I brought on the Atlantic Richfield building in Los Angeles, Art Deco, was by him. So we'll move on to...
Pardon my interruption, Mr. Chair, if we could briefly open public comment just for the record.
Oh, okay, we'll open public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips, and I'm not seeing any movement. We also did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair House.
So then we'll close public comment and move on to item 2 on the agenda, an historic structures report, 1225 to 1229 Bath Street. And property was constructed in 1907 in the Queen Anne Free Classic style, and the property at 1229 Bath Street was constructed in 1904 in the Folk National style. Requesting acceptance of a Phase 1 Historic Structures and Sites report prepared by Sarah Corder, who's here before us.
Mr. Chair, are we okay we're 15 minutes early, are we okay to continue?
Good question.
I
Yeah, you got
believe
some
within
more.
15 minutes of the item start time, you can start the
That
item.
was 30 seconds ago, so I guess we're okay.
Good-
I was
good
planning
catch,
to
though.
entertain for 15 minutes and then start my presentation.
Do you have
That
any
works.
more modernist buildings you can tell us about?
I wish. All right, let's start this party. Okay, thank you all for having me today. Sarah Corder from South Environmental. I am presenting a historic sites and structures report for a project site that includes these 2 buildings you're seeing on the screen. They are identified as 1225 to 1227 Bath Street and 1229 Bath Street. These properties are located next to each other in the 1200 block of Bath Street in the West Downtown neighborhood. Both buildings were constructed in the early 1900s as single-family homes, with 1225 originally constructed in the Queen Anne Free Classic style and 1229 constructed in the Folk National style. The 1225 to 1227 property was originally constructed in circa 1907 and was converted to multifamily in 1925. And then again in 1949, it was remodeled again. At one time, there were 9 rental units within this home. The evolution of this property from a single-family residence to a multifamily property required significant interior and exterior renovations. And I'd like to jump over to showing you some of these photos as we get started talking about those. The biggest changes that you see at this property are the addition of the secondary entry point, which you're seeing on the left side in the first photo, and also the modifications to the original porch on the right side. You can see that the left side of the photo has this kind of mansard roof element happening over there, and we believe that that actually happened between 1925 and 1949. And then in 1949, that section became infilled even more to appear what you're seeing right now is what it has appeared like since 1949. In 1949, they also enclosed what was a side porch at that entry, and you can see the kind of mix-matched materials that they used, including vinyl windows, in the third photo there. They also had some aluminum windows and a metal awning that they threw over on that side. These images all show kind of the changes in fenestration that happened across all elevations of this building, and it really is interesting as to how many doors are actually present. I felt like it was an exercise in counting doors with this one. The first image is showing the north elevation, which is visible from the street. And most of the entry points that the house has now are accessed by these wooden kind of stairs with lattice work and then a wooden porch. And on the first image, you can see that that door was actually placed in part of the enclosed front porch. And then there's another entry on there as well. So 2 entry points here. The middle photo is kind of towards the rear, and that is showing another entry point into another unit. And then the third photo is showing kind of the back and the stairs that were added to the back to access the second floor units. And then there were 2 more entrances added on the south elevation. And this is the back of the enclosed side porch that we were seeing where that secondary entry point was. So a lot happening. When we researched this property, there were a lot of additions. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Sorry. We are switching over to the second property now, 1229 Bath Street. This one is an interesting one, has a lot of new windows, has new entry points, has something resembling a bit of a shanty town on the back of it, so I will get to showing you those pictures. They started out pretty good. They originally started with what we think is around 1904 with this one. Originally designed sort of in folk national. The pop-out window on the front is very not folk national, but it does appear to be original based on our research. And then as we kind of travel through the 30s and the 40s, they just kept adding to the back of it and adding and adding and adding. And then eventually in 1957, they converted it into multifamily. So in the earlier years, it was one family that was doing all the adding. But then in 1957, that's when we started to see the new doors kind of coming in. And now there's, I believe, 4 units on this property today. And they also used whatever materials they had on hand. As you can see from the middle image, there's some vinyl windows there. There's also some board and batten, so really contradictory to what's happening in the front. And the side where the board and batten is, the last photo, all of that is visible from the street today. Okay, here's just some more details of some of the changes that happened. The close-up of those entry points and vinyl windows, giving you a sense of kind of the flat roof line additions that were done. And then they added another entry point, not as obvious as the one on the house next door, but there is a secondary entry point on the original front porch. From a significance standpoint, these properties have the same kind of significance or potential significance because they were both part of the trend in Santa Barbara to convert to single-family homes to multifamily homes during the Depression era and leading into the war era. We also had the potential for important people. Francis Lingham was actually a very well-known real estate developer in early Santa Barbara days. But he maintained an office outside of his property. He owned both of these properties at one time and lived in both of these properties. But we believe that his professional life is what most people knew him for and not where he was living. And the development of these 2 properties is nowhere near on the same level as his larger projects. And then for the architectural styles, they are still recognizable to their styles. So Queen Anne Free Classic and then Folk National style for their architectural significance. So what we found is that these properties, on first glance, don't look that egregious, but once you start digging into them and you start counting doors and things like that and additions, you start to see that there's a lot of integrity issues that are happening. And they also don't really have the level of significance that's needed to meet any of the other criteria. With all of the changes that were made, the architectural styles are still present, but they have been muddled quite a bit, and they're not really reflecting the latest and greatest examples of these styles, especially when we have so many wonderful Queen Anne free classics here. We also have many folk style buildings, mostly folk Victorian style buildings more than the folk national. But really, the biggest thing for me on this one was just the integrity. The integrity is just really poor on both of these buildings, so we're recommending both of them not eligible. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. We'll open public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips, and I'm not seeing any movement. We also did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I will close public comment and open it to questions from the commission.
Mr. Chair, just a quick
Commissioner
question.
Gordon.
I just want to confirm, the 1225 Bath, that started out as a single-family home.
It did. It started out as single family
And
with that one
reached a point
entrance.
with nine units. Okay.
Yes, 9 units.
Any other questions, comments?
I
Commissioner
have
Gordon.
a comment. I'm supportive of accepting the Phase 1 Historic Structures report. I find the conversion of these buildings has, in essence, destroyed their potential historical value for the record of Santa Barbara. I don't find conversion per se from single-family to multi-unit particularly historically significant, in part because there's nothing particular or uniquely Santa Barbara about what happened. This was a national phenomenon. So I'm just not seeing a reason to care about these conversions in terms
Exactly.
of their historical significance.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Uli.
I agree with that. I'll make a motion to accept the Phase 1 structures report.
Motion by Uli, second by
Me, Dennis.
Lenvick.
Chair,
Okay.
Chair House, just a question, comment, I guess. Just out of curiosity, when we do these kinds of reports, is it ever considered, I agree with what has been said, but I just wanted to ask, like, both of them, as you say, like, from the first shot, looking at them, they don't look, they look okay, kind of. I wonder, is there any consideration given or any kind of recommendations given? This is about making them be a historic, to designate, so, but I'm thinking more in terms of, and maybe this isn't relevant, about whether, that the front part of the structure might be somehow preserved in any future development, or at least to be considered, or possibly relocated, where the little house might be moved and all the stuff that's on the back, which is of little value, whether that's anything that's thought about or put forth as something to consider.
Absolutely. From a preservation standpoint, that is always the first thing on my brain is like, can we save it regardless of it being eligible or not? Because just reusing stock buildings that we have is very good for our environment and things like that. But when we have something that has been added on to so much in such an egregious way that the original plan is completely destroyed on the inside and the outside, for these ones, it makes that kind of concept not really something we could do because it just like was a snowball effect with them, and there's really not a lot left. With the two-story one, there's really not a lot left to that one. I went back and forth on the smaller green one because when you look at it, you can see the style, but it really just came down to it does have two street-facing elevations, and the long elevation is very, very bad. So just, it wasn't the project for that to be happening, and it just wasn't significant enough to really make a recommendation that it could be preserved. Now, if it had just been the front part and that was still intact, that would definitely have been a recommendation that we made.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, this is not in El Pueblo Viejo, so we'll never see it again.
Especially if we don't designate it.
Yeah.
Right. I think I can add on to Commissioner Katzensberg's statement or question. If somebody came along and wanted to restore that back, once it was restored, we could look at it and say, wow, you really did restore it back to having the integrity. And that would trigger ours. But we don't have the authority to make them make that decision for them. And the relocation, that is really difficult. We've relocated one building as a commission since I've been here, and they had to chop it in 3 pieces, take down all the power lines and move it across. And it lost some integrity just in the move, and it's really difficult. They used to move at least 20 buildings a year around town, and there was some interesting articles about that, but the trees have grown up, and so the lights and the infrastructure that makes it so hard that moving, I think after that experience that we had, would be the last resort. And the cost, and the zoning doesn't even, I was fighting with the zoning staff, you have to let them do this. And so, but that all comes before we kind of designate it. Did you have, I think,
Thank you very much for that
Yeah, and
addition.
maybe if I could just thinking about the fabric and how these little things are so important. And maybe, as you say, maybe it's just so difficult that it's not possible, but I would hope, and maybe this is part of our Department of Historic Preservation to address, is how we might at least put out support for that kind of thing, should someone be interested, just so that we kind of keep it as something that we recognize that's important, if possible, and try to help if it can be done. And it sounds like we are doing that to the greatest extent possible, but I just would like to appreciate that and encourage that, because I think all of these little things, and maybe people might think of a good, creatively think of a way. I mean, that could be like an ADU maybe for somebody, or some other ways that we might think about how can we keep these little pieces in a way, and recognizing that the whole interior would have to be redone. But it just, enough said on that, but to just support that thinking.
right, and I think that's why we bring them to you to make the decision, because they're not completely gone yet. And the ones that are really intact are really important for us to keep intact, because we can only really give some teeth to help pushing people to restoration and adaptive reuse when we can designate them. That's where we can push them a little harder.
Yeah, thank you for that. Is it premature to ask to be put on the list to be notified when a project comes before ABR on this?
Yes, without a case number for the project, we can't add you as an interested
Okay.
party, but if commissioners are interested, if the project comes through, I can try to note that and
Thank you.
send you all an email.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much. Always good to see you.
Pardon the interruption. I don't,
Yeah.
we have to vote.
We do have the motion on the floor.
I'd appreciate that, but.
And public comment, I think. Did you do
We
public comment?
opened
We
a
did
public
open public
comment, yeah.
comment, and we have a motion and a second on the floor, so we just need a vote.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair House. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Uli,
Losing ourselves in the fog.
Yeah.
Yes.
Commissioner Dordan,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindvik,
Yes.
Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you.
I won't be here for the next 2 meetings, so don't worry about me.
Okay.
Well, I hope you're going somewhere fun.
I feel so much smarter.
What's that?
I feel so much smarter today.
Oh, good.
I've trained you.
Yeah, I know.
The Winchester Mystery House approach.
Okay, we're moving on to item 3 on the agenda, and we're still about 15 minutes ahead of schedule, but not any more than 15 minutes.
Slow down.
Yeah, we could talk more.
Talk slower.
Yeah. Okay, I will speak very slowly. So this is a one-time pre-application consultation, city right-of-way bicycle parking, proposed new bicycle rack designs to replace existing racks in the public right-of-way within El Pueblo Viejo, consistent with citywide rack replacement. No final appealable action will take place at this meeting. Project compatibility findings will be required for project design approval. So, if you could introduce yourselves and give your presentation.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair House, Commissioners. My name is Sam Furtner. I am the Mobility Coordinator. Can you guys hear me okay on the mic?
You're on, yeah.
I am the Mobility Coordinator for the Sustainability and Resilience Department, and we're here this afternoon to hear feedback from your board on our bigger picture approach to increasing secure, accessible, and convenient bicycle parking in the public right-of-way. The intent today really is to get your feedback on some rack designs, some rack color options, and really give us more tools to increase our ability to react to site locations and constraints. So give us more flexibility in where we locate bike parking throughout downtown and through EPV. With the intent to reduce street clutter that we see from incorrectly parked bicycles and really keep EPV consistent with that guiding philosophy of keeping the streets ordered and consistent and free of clutter. I'd like to introduce myself and Jessica Grant. So I'm, as I mentioned, Sam Furtner, and this is Jessica Grant. I'll pass to you.
Yes, Jessica Grant, Supervising Transportation Planner with the city. And I'll pass it back to Sam to continue with the presentation.
So as mentioned, our goal today really is to get some early feedback from your group on the preferred rack designs and the preferred rack colors. But in order to do that, I think it's important to set the table for the conversation today with some context of how we got here and where we'd like to go. So we recently completed the city's first ever bicycle parking inventory. And it's a very useful tool that shows that we have a lot of bike parking density in our downtown. And it also identifies numerous areas throughout the city where we have minimal or lacking bike parking. And just to give you a sense of, when looking at where you want to locate bike parking, you really want to see increased density in areas with higher access needs, areas with access to key destinations. Certainly coastal areas are great locations, as well as businesses, places that have lots of services where residents and tourists might go. So what's this look like in El Pueblo Viejo? We found that we have about 825 racks located throughout the city of Santa Barbara. I would anticipate that we have not cataloged a few of the racks in the more residential areas, just because it's been a pretty intensive lift with interns going out and doing the physical mapping on these. But I feel very confident in the number of racks that we have recorded in El Pueblo Viejo. Currently in EPV, we have 583 racks in El Pueblo Viejo. Most of these are the bicycle hitching post. We do have a number of bike corrals, and I'll get into more detail on those in a moment. But just as a snapshot in time, it's important to consider how many of these we have, where they're located, where we need more of them, and then also something that the survey has done is giving us a sense of the condition these racks are in. Right now in EPV, we have about 83 racks that are in poor to fair condition. Some major aesthetic and functional issues with these racks that would slate them for immediate replacement, to be functional and to look even somewhat decent. So another part of the conversation today is bringing our own city standards up to snuff with what we require for private development. So currently our access and parking design standards require new development to provide bicycle parking that meets these 4 criteria. It needs to support a bicycle in at least 2 places, preventing it from falling over. It needs to be securely anchored to the ground. It needs to resist cutting, bending, deformation, etc. And it needs to be designed to prevent scratching of bicycles. Our city bicycle hitching post currently meets one of these criteria, which is it can be securely anchored to the ground. So let's look at the hitching post. It's been around in Santa Barbara for quite a while. They do a couple things well, which I'll cover in a coming slide, and they do a lot of things pretty poorly. They're quite expensive, first off. These are made in-house by our single-person staffed weld shop, so significant lead time on processing the orders for these. Very dependent on other critical infrastructure that the weld shop might be working on. Additionally, we source the custom aluminum finial from a shop down in Oxnard that requires significant lead time. When we last ordered in 2019, those finials were $50 a piece, and I anticipate they've gone up in price since then. Some of the limitations of a hitching post, they provide one point of contact, and bikes regularly fall when parked at hitching posts. Some of the hitching posts, in an effort to prevent scratching of bicycles, which is very common with these, included a PVC sheathing that would slip over the 1.5-inch diameter pipe. Those have terrible paint adhesion. So what happens is the spray painted Malaga green flakes off, and you have a green rack with white splatter paint, essentially, on the upper portion of it. Additionally, we see a lot of damage to heavier traffic areas like the rings and the pipes where bikes are slamming against them, paint chipping off, etc. Additionally, these racks have a 2.5-inch diameter ring that offers minimal theft resistance. We have done some experiments, and you can cut through one of these pretty quickly with a pair of bolt cutters. Additionally, these are prone to rust. They are not powder coated. They are not covered in thermoplastic. We see a significant paint fade in these. And lastly, we see a lot of incorrect installation and user errors in using hitching posts for bike parking. So what are hitching posts good for? There's two key attributes that I can think of. So that's one I hadn't thought of, actually, so thank you for that. They make great signposts. This one in front of the post office has been there for probably 10 years. Again, not super intuitive that is a bike parking facility, but a really good long-term signpost and a pretty good temporary signpost as well. This one's on State Street from a month or two ago. So that's one benefit of them. Apparently you could tie your dog to it. The other benefit is that, and this is really why we're here today, but a hitching post, when there's not a bicycle parked at it, takes up a very small footprint. So in areas where we see more pedestrian congestion, where we see more street users, if it's parking adjacent to a curb, keeping an infrastructure with minimal impacts to the furnishing zone is something that we go for, and we really appreciate that about the hitching post. When there's not a bike parked at this hitching post, the footprint is very minimal. As I mentioned, these are not great for parking bicycles on. This is a common site in our downtown. Part of this has to do with just the single point of contact, and part of this has to do with the user interface of the hitching post. These are some common issues that we see. This is all actually one location on Lower State Street. This has been remedied, but just wanted to point out a couple common issues that we see. First of all, you can see in the image on your left that the hitching post orientation is different, which would tell users to park their bikes differently. So the hitching post in the middle of the left photo, you would be parking your bicycle perpendicular to State Street. And the one on the lower right-hand side of that same photo, you would be parking parallel to State Street, which adds to some confusion and disorder in our right-of-way. Additionally, the finials are really easy to pop off of these. Last year or the year before, I replaced 15 different finials on State Street because somebody discovered they could walk down the street and slide something heavy up the pipe, and it knocked the finial off. So really prone to vandalism. That leaves an open piece of 2-inch pipe that is prone to gathering water and other things. And then lastly, as I mentioned, these rings are quite easy to cut. I've replaced 4 hitching posts in the last year in the downtown area, and every one of those translates to a stolen bike. These are so hard to use that we actually created a video a number of years ago showing users how to park at a hitching post. because downtown parking was seeing such impacts in hitching post locations on State Street, people parking incorrectly, blocking sidewalks, blocking ingress to businesses. What you're seeing here is the correct way to park at a hitching post. In this position, a hitching post can hold 2 bikes securely and provide access around the bikes to gain access to the bike from either side. City facility in the photograph on your right, where every single hitching post was installed incorrectly, so the orientation is off. Were you to park a bike correctly at this hitching post, you would effectively block access to somebody else parking a bike at the hitching post and the hitching post adjacent to you. We see this a lot, even on city facilities. And lastly, we see a lot of mimicry of the hitching post design. And part of this is due to the fact that the hitching post is not something that we can sell to members of the public. Because we make them in-house, because they're done by our weld shop, somebody can't come in and say, I want to order 30 hitching posts. I'm required to put in bike parking consistent with your design standards. You know, even in right-of-way locations, we cannot sell the hitching post to members of the public. So we see a lot of one-offs and DIY versions. I'm showing this one on a private location, mostly to demonstrate something that we see with these one-off designs and with the hitching post, which is, this has even smaller rings. This is about 1.5 inch diameter ring, and a lot of bicycle parking locks are moving this direction now. And as you can see, these work great if you're going around something round. Threading this through a 1-inch ring and then around a secure part of your bicycle and getting it locked when you have one access point in the middle of the elevation of a hitching post is very challenging. If any of you are interested in trying that, I love to see it. So yeah, we see these kind of copycat hitching post designs coming up quite a bit as well. So what are the policy supporting documents that we have to go with today that we're working with in this conversation? Even as far back as the 1974 Bicycle Master Plan, we knew there was a demand for secure and convenient and accessible bike parking in our downtown. Fast forwarding to our 2016 BMP, we have specific measures that call for upgrading bike racks with 1 point of securement to racks with 2 points of securement. For example, replacing current hitching posts with U-locks that offer 2 points of contact. And then we also have a measure to replace these substandard racks with high-quality bicycle racks at public buildings, popular destinations, and city parks. We also see support for this action moving forward in this effort from our newly council-adopted climate action plan. I'm sharing this slide as from our 2019 inventory of GHG emissions here in the city. And the reason is that in 2019, passenger transportation was still the biggest source of emissions in the city, but we also had significant emissions from electricity generation and food going to landfills. With Santa Barbara Clean Energy offering GHG-free electricity to Santa Barbara homes and businesses, we took care of the electricity generation GHG emissions component. With Tahigas landfill operating higher and better quality organics recycling, we took care of food to landfills and the methane generation from that. So in our city right now, the lion's share of our GHG emissions are coming from passenger transportation. Council has a bold goal of eliminating GHG emissions here in the city. And with their direction and their council implemented and adopted climate action plan, which has several measures in it to enhance access to safe, active transportation. We see ways to facilitate and enable our residents, our tourists, to use different modes to get around town that will effectively lower those passenger vehicle emissions. One of the ways to do that really is to provide secure and accessible bicycle parking that people can trust. And I think that's an issue we have right now with the hitching post, is these are not secure facilities. As I mentioned in the inventory and the survey that we have showing bike parking locations, we also have a lot of areas, particularly along the coastline, that do not have sufficient access to bicycle parking. One example of that is from Stearns Wharf all the way to the Cabrillo Rec Center. There are 5 public bike parking spaces in one of the heaviest trafficked areas in our downtown waterfront area. So when we look at bike parking, as I mentioned, we want to maintain our pedestrian through zones. We want to account for vehicle overhang, pedestrian flow. We also want to account for anything parking adjacent, not being in the door zone, and also not blocking an individual who's trying to get out of their car and into the pedestrian zone on a sidewalk. And as I mentioned before, we also want to provide this as a convenient and secure option at key destinations. So the way we've done this is by putting in bike corrals. And these have been really, really successful, especially during the pandemic and emerging from the pandemic. We're seeing a lot of people ride bicycles, and these are getting a ton of use throughout town. This is the HLC-approved Hunko Sole Rack that we use for bike corral installations. It comes in Hunter dark green. Those are the thermoplastic colors that were chosen. They're quite robust. We've had these in place in certain areas for 10 years that look better than hitching posts that have gone in 2 to 3 years ago. And they're getting used a lot. Theft resistant, in order to cut through this, you would need a cordless angle grinder and be willing to make a lot of noise. The other benefit of this design is it's off the shelf. So we plan an installation, we can order them, we know the time frame they're going to be delivered. There aren't all these variables with in-house fabrication. So the Hunko Sole Rack works really well for a bike corral where we have a lot of space. A number of our bike corrals are actually in street, so you're not as concerned about that pedestrian flow component. They would not work well for a standalone rack replacement as we might see with a hitching post. So what we've brought before you today are several options that we think could be feasible for implementation in EPV and throughout the city. And the benefits of these different racks, they're all made by Huntco, which we have a great working relationship with right now. Most of these are somewhat what I would say off-the-shelf designs in that the first 3, the Rambler Wide, and the Staple are actually made by different manufacturers as well. So there's some, there's an assurance that should Huntco go out of business, for example, this style could be still something that we could replicate moving forward. And what we like about these racks are, again, a smaller footprint. The user interface is much better with 2 points of contact. And something that we appreciate as well is these say that I am a bike rack and I'm here for parking a bike. I get a lot of people coming into out of town that they ask about the weird green posts all over the place and what are they for. So again, communicating what these are in a public space is going to really drive utilization. And especially offering something more secure for users. Oh, I'd just like to point out on this previous slide, apologies. The Huntco Luna, I'll cover the specifications on that in a moment, but it's a smaller footprint than our current Sole Rack. It's a new rack they just rolled out this year. It has a 28-inch width as compared to our Huntco Sole, which is 36 inches. So it could be well suited to a more space-constrained bike corral. It would still not be a good candidate for a freestanding rack replacement, given the width. I'll just quickly touch on some of the specifications of these. Again, the Huntco Rambler, we appreciate this because it has a 14.4-inch footprint. I would like to point out the slides on the previous slide that we just looked at showed a number of stainless options that are clearly not appropriate for EPV. Those are just stock images, but I think in black or green could be well suited to what we have in town. And again, the benefit of the narrow footprint is when a bike is not parked at this facility, it's not going to be taking as much sidewalk space away. Rambler wide, this is the prototypical inverted U rack. There's dozens of different makers, which enables this to be easily replicatable should, again, we have supply issues, and it's an off-the-shelf design. So again, if we could get approval for some preferred rack designs, this would give us a suite of different racks that we could use in different locations depending on site constraints. I'd also like to point out as we go through all of these spec sheets that every one of these rack options is more affordable than our currently in-house made option, and they're covered in 8 to 10 mils of thermoplastic coating over a powder-coated rack already, so they're quite robust, and they've held up really well in the public right-of-way here in the city. Also like to point out that the staple also has a narrower footprint, and especially combined with a diagonal orientation can really limit the space that a bike corral could take up. So that's another viable option. And then again, here's the Luna showing the smaller stature of this rack, reminiscent of the Soul, similar aesthetics, just a smaller footprint. Lastly, as I mentioned, we have currently black and green thermoplastic options on the ground in EPV in bike corral form. They've held up very well, and our recommendation today would be to continue with those two colors. Again, thermoplastic is very good at preventing scratches to bikes, and especially as you get higher end electronic bikes and even pedal bikes, we see a lot of hesitancy with people wanting to use hitching posts, especially ones that have rust and jagged edges and flaking paint. It's just not an inviting place to park your $4,000 e-bike. So our hope is in providing something that's accessible and secure, we can actually control where people are parking a little bit more, as well as enhancing parking availability where it's currently limited. As I mentioned, multiple rack designs means more site flexibility for us. We can put bike parking in more places where we cannot do it right now. The goal from this meeting and moving forward is to ensure that our city access and parking design guidelines and standards meet our own internal city guidelines for bicycle parking. And we really want to have the end result from this effort be enhanced security user interface that leads to high quality and secure bike parking that is intuitive to use. Again, the key word here is these are not intuitive to use currently, and how can we shape community behavior and ensure orderly and consistent bike parking so we don't have people locking to signposts that might be more secure than our current hitching post. As mentioned, consistency and simplicity in design. Another thing that we haven't discussed yet today, but our bike parking does not currently meet industry best practices. As a matter of fact, we apply for a bicycle-friendly city designation from the League of American Cyclists, and the only publicly available bike parking that meets their requirements of high-quality bike parking are our bike corrals. So we essentially have 5 publicly available bike parking facilities in a city, which really impacts our city rating. And additionally, none of our hitching posts offer 2 points of contact or sufficient security to clear the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Planners guidelines. And lastly, moving forward with some new rack designs, it would really offer us a way to have more affordable and accessible rack options, even for private development. So we might even see some more consistency in the types of racks that are put in private development moving forward if we had some preferred rack designs that we could drive developers to. We are moving forward with some grant opportunities to discuss large-scale prioritized replacement based on condition, both inside and outside of EPV. We will be going to ABR as an information item. Bike racks do not require a building permit, so that will be more of this is the direction we're going. And obviously, we want to bring your feedback into that discussion moving forward as well. Again, recommendation for today is just to receive your input on the preferred rack design and the preferred colors for the racks. That concludes my presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Did I hear you say that the bike racks will require a building permit?
No.
They do not require a building
I
permit.
thought I heard a scream out there someplace.
No, you heard a scream, but it wasn't about that.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, it does. I did just want to point out that we have physical racks on
Oh,
hand
so you
today.
do.
Just to get a sense of how they feel, what they look like, the footprint, et cetera.
And is that the dark green color, the green choices?
That is correct. And I would also like to point out, these are brand new. They will patina. With a little bit of UV exposure and a little bit of usage, that will become more of a matte color over time.
Don't hit me with that.
Sam, if you, I'm not Mike, if you want to introduce which each one was again.
This is the Rambler Narrow. It's a 14.4-inch footprint. So, yeah,
They're heavy.
more narrow. They're heavy. They're
Let's see it.
quite well made.
Yeah.
I'm not a cyclist, so I never see these things.
Are you,
We're not into questions yet. We're going to have public comment first.
We're just,
If that concludes your presentation. we'll
It
go.
does, yeah. And this grant is bringing over the Rambler, so this, the Rambler Wide, which has a slightly more wide footprint, but same basic design.
And the other one's a staple?
The other one is the Staple, that's correct, and that's a 30-inch wide rack. Again, one of the benefits of these is that they all offer multiple different locking locations. So if you have an e-bike with a low down tube, you could lock your bike down here. If you have something taller, you could lock it up there. There's innumerable different points of contact where you could lock your bike.
Okay. All right, if you're done, then we'll go to public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. At this time, I'm not seeing anyone in the audience, and we don't have any virtual participants, but we did receive written correspondence from Joanna Kaufman and Sullivan Israel on behalf of Strongtown Santa Barbara. It was distributed to the commission prior to the hearing. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair House.
Thank you. I'll close public comment, and I'll open it to questions. Commissioner Landrick.
yeah, do you have a preference? I guess you're looking for one rack approved?
Our preference would be to be able to have choices, not only for within the right-of-way, and it really depends on what the sidewalk width is. And it also gives, again, what we're hoping not only for public racks in the right-of-way, but for private development too, that they have a catalog to choose from as well.
Commissioner Jordan, do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. It really clarifies things very well. And so you know where my questions are coming from. I'm placing a very high priority on the pedestrian passage down the sidewalks, particularly for mobility impaired or senior citizens. That's where my questions are coming from. So let me start with saying, why should any bicycle be parked on the sidewalk?
I can answer that. We do have an adopted pedestrian master plan, as well as adopted bicycle master plan as well. And we concur with you that our sidewalks need to be accessible. The diagram that Mr. Fertner had showed, and we'll wait till that comes on the screen, but this is not only part of our pedestrian master plan, but the city's code as well. Where the bike racks are located is the furnishing zone. So think like the parkways or where there's tree wells. We don't have as much parkways right in the downtown area. There's a lot of tree well locations, but it would be in that area. Then there's like the through zone of a sidewalk. That's the area that we do not want impeded for access. And so they're very strategically placed. If they're not meeting our own guidelines, we're not putting a bike rack in those locations.
One issue that comes up, and I'm thinking about downtown State Street in the immediate area, is the outdoor dining licensing agreement, which would allow a restaurant to have some tables outside, but still requires a certain width on the sidewalk for through. So could you have bicycle racks outside a restaurant that had outdoor dining? Is the sidewalk downtown wide enough to accommodate both the needs of the restaurant and potentially the needs of the cycle community?
Committee Member Dordan, through the chair, the short answer is yes. The areas where we see the outdoor dining is really the State Street area, and those are our largest sidewalks as intended in the pedestrian master plan, as well as Cabrillo. Those are our largest two sidewalk areas, specifically designed so you can accommodate bike racks. And then where we would see, again, pre-pandemic, where there is permitted sidewalk dining is what we would call that frontage zone that you see on the diagram here. Again, frontage zones vary between the face of building, but that's when you travel along State Street, right adjacent to buildings. Those are the areas that can accommodate both.
The other question I had, what was the other question? The difference between bicycles and e-bikes. And I assume these racks can accommodate both, but why from your point of view of mobility, is an e-bike the same thing as a bicycle? Or could you have a different set of rules for motorized vehicles, which is what I think an e-bike is?
Commissioner
Dordan,
apologies. The short answer is that is a long answer for a different day. Right now, in the state of California, e-bikes have a class designation from 1 through 3, and those are treated exactly the same as a regular pedal bike in the state of California.
So that's state legislation.
That is state legislation. We do anticipate that may change in the future, but for right now, e-bikes are essentially conventional pedal bikes. And there's a whole other conversation on the enforcement front and behavior and all that we won't get into here. But it's important to point out that areas that had been previously inaccessible to bicycling that were really part of our bike network, but not really part of our bike network. I think of like the Cliff Drive and the Mesa. Those areas are now accessible using an e-bike. And what we're seeing is a lot more people commuting to downtown and using these facilities along our waterfront, throughout the Funk Zone, State Street certainly, in ways that we've expanded that sphere of influence significantly in just the past couple of years, and we do not have sufficient bike parking of any type in those areas to accommodate that increase in users.
Okay. Let's keep with state legislation for a moment and still focusing on downtown. The state has recently passed this whole set of laws that have changed requirements for developers involving automobiles. You don't have to have the same number of parking spaces that you once did. So we're in a moment in time when the state of California is saying to local jurisdictions, forget the old rules, we're changing the game on you. Why can't we say you can't park on a bicycle on the street at all? We have an extensive series of public garages downtown. Why can't we build more bike corrals in those garages and say to the bicyclists, I don't care what the past has been, the state of California has changed all those rules. You now have to park your bike in a garage, just like anybody else who comes to downtown in a vehicle and then walk to State Street.
So there's.
Those are fighting words.
Yeah, I know they are, and you're not going to stop, but I want to raise, I wanted on.
Committee Member Jordan, through the chair. So the focus on today is when we have just regular public bike parking available. Separate process, and a process that my team reviews, is private land development. And you're right, most of the EPV area now, because of AB 2097, does not require vehicular parking. There are still requirements to accommodate bicycle parking for private development. They are not exempt, and it's even more important to have bike parking because there is no vehicle parking. And
I agree.
And because they're right in the downtown where biking and walking is so accessible. But now we need to think about, say, what's the canal development that was most recently put on Gutierrez and State Street would be the closest. But what happens if, again, limited vehicles, they want to go to the Granada Theater? Well, maybe a little bit too far to walk, but they need a bike to the theater. Then, we need to be able to have public bike parking available.
I understand. Yeah.
Just to add to that, Commissioner Jordan, I think point well received. There's a lot to unpack there, but speaking from what I've seen with bike riders in Santa Barbara, if there is not sufficient bike parking close to their destination, they will walk to whatever is close to their destination. So limiting access to bike parking is going to add significantly to sidewalk and street clutter throughout downtown.
You have a question?
No.
Okay, you looked at me as if you did.
Well, I was wondering.
Okay, Commissioner Ansberg, you
Yes,
have a
thank you.
question?
Thank you. So how is, I have a number of questions. So first of all, each one of these can accommodate 2 bikes, right? That's right. Okay. And that's the same as this other one that we had, 2 bikes.
Correct.
Potentially. And I guess what I don't understand how, I'm a bike rider, and the way that I think most of us have done is we take our bike, we take it inside the restaurant if we could, and park it right next to our table. So, that's what we do, and that's what we expect to do, and we get away with it. And so there does have to be, I think, some kind of enforcement about where people take their bikes. But we have these expensive bikes, and so you take it and you just find a place and you connect it to whatever it is. So if you're sitting outside a restaurant and they have a railing around, you take the bike, you hook it on there, and then you sit there right next to it where you can watch it. Right? That's what I have experienced myself. So I don't see how, or the question is, how are these more secure? Because the real security is in the locking system. They don't come over and saw the thing that you're attached to. They cut off and that's why you have this really fancy one that I've never seen before. But people are getting more and more solid with their type of locking system that can't be chopped. And then, of course, there's the bike itself of where you can't lock it around the wheel because they'll just take the wheel off and take your wheel. You're not, or then the bike is not. So you have to attach it to the frame, right? So I guess I'm not really understanding how this massive piece of steel is really helping, unless it's just kind of you're trying to be more aesthetic and some other reason maybe is why. So maybe you could speak to that for a moment.
Certainly, Commissioner Ensberg. So the takeaway here is that you cannot prevent all theft. And we actually had a city employee who was locked to an arc rack, a Hunko Soul rack at City Hall. And during a council meeting, somebody came and cut through her bike lock like this with an angle grinder in broad daylight.
Wow.
You cannot prevent that. And anecdotally speaking, in all of my outreach to different shops, professional bike theft has increased significantly. PD has confirmed that as well. You see a $4,000 e-bike sitting on the street, and it might be worth it for you to do that, with a angle grinder in broad daylight. The difference being is that that might take somebody 60 seconds to a couple of minutes with an angle grinder in broad daylight. I cut through our hitching post in 12 seconds with a pair of bolt cutters that would fit in a backpack. So they are not as secure as something like this. This, again, would require an angle grinder or something more significant to actually demolish the pipe.
So it doesn't matter what lock you have, It's a very easy, there's a engineering flaw to the hitching post.
Yeah, I
And it's a
don't-
weakest
I-
link.
I'm not, I think both of them are flawed, but what I'm saying is there, like, there is one way. If you go to Earth Day, they have a bike corral. You put your bike in there, you get a ticket, they watch your bike, and then you go to your thing, you come back, your bike's there. So I think that
Pardon my
that is.
interruption through the chair to the rest of the commission. I'd just like to remind the commission that in terms of parking and security, that's not under this commission's purview. So please focus on the aesthetics. And I understand security aesthetics of the rack itself is part of this commission's concerns, but suggesting things like enforcement or outside security, outside of the aesthetics of the bike rack isn't really part of this commission's purview. Thank you.
Thank you. So the aesthetic, how is this reducing clutter, I guess, and where are the locations of the bike corrals that we have now? And could they be located in places that were more aesthetic, where you could just have a whole ton of bikes, but they're not in the aesthetic visual of State Street?
Excellent question. We have a number of bike corrals in different locations. We have a bike corral on sidewalk next to Eureka at Paseo Nuevo. We have an in-street corral at Canon Perdido, and a few others throughout town. But the reality is those are smaller, more densely located areas that still get a lot of use. But what we're talking about today is essentially looking at ways to replace the freestanding or standalone hitching post style rack that are more done on like a one-off approach of, oh, here's a restaurant. We want to provide access for their staff and for also people that are going to dine at that restaurant to have an orderly, consistent, secure place to park their bike.
Well, as we can see, everything's all tied together, isn't it? So the aesthetic and all of it, and to Commissioner Dorden's comment, we do have public parking garages. Is that something that has been considered or is being looked at, that we could possibly have secure parking corrals in the public parking garages where people could then park and know that their bikes were safe and we wouldn't have to have the clutter on State Street? Is that a possibility?
The short answer is it's one of many locations. So there already are, that's another bike corral, for example, at parking lot 5 downtown. So it's something we already have. It's of nature for a cyclist to park right next to their destination. So although we have parking garages and surface lots, that's really made with an emphasis for the vehicles, or we do have a couple of locked facilities, the bike spots right next to the MTD Center, and then also Granada Garage. But if your office is down on the 400 block of State Street, you're not going to use those facilities. You want something close to your destination. So as Mr. Fertner mentioned, we have about 500 existing racks already in the downtown, and it would be a replacement over time, or as we have grant funding to replace all of those. So it's not adding to those hitching posts, it's removing those hitching posts and just putting where we had bike parking. But as we see over time too, and you see the density of racks or destinations change, so we would anticipate, as needed, to have racks near critical destinations in our community.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you very much.
Question.
Commissioner Butler.
So, correct me, I thought I heard you said today in the EPV we have 583 racks? That's right. Okay, and these are individual hitching posts?
The majority of them are.
Okay.
That
and
also
spread out-
includes the bicycle corral facilities that we mentioned within EPV.
Okay. 83 are in poor or?
Correct.
And the plan is, if one of these newer designs were to be approved, I'll put it as a question, is the plan to replace the 583 with something new, different? Is there a plan to install additional above the 583? And if so, how many?
Great questions, Commissioner Butler. Yes, the overarching plan and goal and kind of the North Star with all of this is to remove and replace all of our outdated and relatively poorly maintained bicycle parking infrastructure, hitching posts, and replace them with something better, both within EPV and throughout the entire city. As Ms. Grant mentioned, we have a lot of density in the downtown core. So I anticipate that would not require additional bicycle parking at this time. That would be a prioritized replacement based on condition of racks. So the ones that are really looking funky would be pulled out and replaced with new. That'd be a like-for-like installation, so similar orientation, similar location, similar area in the furnishing zone, you know, ensuring that we're complying with PMP, et cetera. That being said, we are interested in adding additional bike parking facilities along East Beach and along the Class 1 multi-use path in that area because we continue to field requests almost on a daily basis for additional bike parking at our beach facilities. And every time I go down there, there are bikes locked to planters, street poles, et cetera. So there is clearly a need.
So follow-up question. Just, again, I'm just trying to make sure I've got this right. So the current expectation is to replace the existing 583 racks over some period of time in the same location that those posts exist today, correct? Would the plan or that process also consider corrals? I think you've noted in my experience in other location cities is the bike corrals seem to be the ability to throw, 100 bicycles in a very confined space. Would that be also as part of, are you exploring bike corral opportunities?
That's a good question, and that's something, a different topic, but when we were looking at our public bike share system and the rack design for that, and if you may have recalled, maybe some of the hearings for that and the rack design at the time was to have that single design. There was a concern that we didn't want to look like a college campus and have kind of that visual aesthetic. We've kept our corrals to roughly about 6 to 8, I would say, for posts and density. That feels right for our downtown based on the destinations that those existing corrals exist. Again, Paseo Nuevo, one of our downtown parking facilities, a couple in the Funk Zone, and then right across from the Presidio as well. That's a very popular one. So we could look at those. Those are great for kind of the side streets when we have the narrower sidewalks where you, again, from accessibility, want to have that free for pedestrians. So we'll continue to look at those designs for probably the side streets for State Street or in the Funk Zone area that also has very limited sidewalk and narrow sidewalks there.
One more question. You put up the color palette that's provided by the Huntco Corporation? Okay. Are there any other options for color? Because as we get into the discussion about design, et cetera, for the EPV, that's going to be important consideration. So are there any other color options besides those?
We can go back to that screen with the colors. I think just in the past direction when we've had public works related facilities, Malaga green always is seems to be the popular, and what we've always heard from the HLC is to not over design or keeps things simple, which is why we've had the green and black color. Could it be different colors? Yes, it could be different colors as well, or it could be based upon neighborhoods. You have different colors. I don't know. Where we're open to that, that's what we would like feedback on.
Thank you.
Just to add to that too, for a point of clarification, these two colors are currently in place in EPV from previous direction through HLC. And the reason we landed on these is that this is their palette of thermoplastic offerings. They can custom match any color we want to with powder coating, but the manufacturer has recommended with powder coating that you're not going to get the lifespan and the aesthetic durability, especially in quasi-marine environments, with powder coating that you will with thermoplastic, because bike racks are metal, and the metal on metal engagement of a bike parking over and over and over chips away that powder coating, and you're at raw metal and rust.
I will follow up on the question about the potential for added bicycle racks in the EPV. You're saying they would mostly be on the waterfront. So in the downtown core, there's not necessarily an expectation of a lot more.
We feel pretty good
bicycle
about the density of
Yeah.
racks right now. Yes, yeah, Mr. Fertner has there, and then there's another image. If you go to the dots, that represents
Right.
the bike parking. But as you, you see, so we have a nice density there, but yeah, the waterfront, that's, yeah, it's very few and far between, and there's so many destinations along the waterfront. And again, it's trying to get away from that visual clutter of locking your bike to a tree, to other signposts, et cetera, that there's expectations to park your bike to minimize that clutter on areas of landscaping that we want free of clutter.
Right. And my other question would be, when you talk about replacing existing hitching posts with one of these models, it sounded like you would just replace ones that were in bad condition. So there might be a group where you've got some hitching posts and some of these?
I think in that scenario, we would make every effort to replace groups so that it would minimize that kind of jumbled aesthetic.
Okay.
Again, important to point out here, but we do not currently have funding for a large-scale replacement, so we are pursuing that. We've never had a formal budget for bike racks in the city. It's always been kind of on an as-needed basis, but we're starting to see some real aging infrastructure that are, it's on a weekly basis that I get a damaged hitching post replacement request or a new hitching post request. Just to speak to your previous question, we have a lot of businesses in town that open up that want to cater to bicyclists. And so I regularly get requests, hey, can you please install 2 hitching posts in the public right-of-way in front of my restaurant or my foundation or whatever it might be. And that is a scenario where we would go out and do a site assessment and determine the density of bike parking adjacent to that facility and potentially add more bike parking should it merit it.
Okay. So if there aren't any more questions, we can go into comments. Who would like to start?
I'll start.
Commissioner McClure.
Okay, I have a couple of comments. For one thing, in the EPV, I find this to be very modern, and I like the hitching post. And I have a thought on, because it's less mass, and it's more traditional. What about seeking out a manufacturer to get it out of the city's manufacturing process into a contracting with a builder, which that the finial could be welded on, and maybe you could add perpendicular rings to take care of that problem, or at least try to help with that problem of only having 2 people in a directional parking. And maybe those rings could be hardened steel. And then another so that's kind of a large point. I like the simplicity and the less mass of the single post. And then what about thermoplastic coating that is a matte finish right out of the factory? Seems like that could be asked of the manufacturer. And let's see. Oh, and then if you could go to that the bike rack installation on State Street where it's in brick with the concrete footing. Yeah, that. I find that to be not very graceful. So I know we can't probably custom cut brick to, like in the perfect world, that post would come right up out of the brick cleanly. That's pretty bulky. And I know we probably can't have brick custom, like these little tiny triangles and facets, et cetera. But that seems like that could be stained, because I know concrete stains are available and they like to be in that warmer sepia and rust tone. So that was a comment. To me, that's there's just kind of a lot visually going on there. And I think that's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Lenvig.
Thank you. I am impressed with the presentation that was made today. And I feel really confident that we've got some good people watching over this process of putting bike racks in. I really appreciate what Jessica and you are doing, Sam. It really is quite interesting, and I'm comfortable with it. One of the things I've noticed recently all over downtown is more and more of the electric bikes are being ridden by mature adults as opposed to children, no matter what age the children might be. But we're seeing people Robert Uli's age.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Which means they're. Which means your parents didn't buy it for you, and you have some concern about it, right? Okay. So.
If I had one, I would.
Right. A parent or a bike?
Either.
Not to digress, I think you guys are impressive, and I really appreciate what you're telling us and showing us. I'm not sure that I necessarily agree that what you're showing us too modern. You know, we're wearing tennis shoes downtown and Bermuda shorts. I don't know that a round bike rack is that bad as a solution to the problem. And personally, I think any one of those 3 or 4 you're showing are adequate. I think you are going to select the ones that are most appropriate, and you're going to do it aesthetically. I personally don't want to see every bike rack location that you're going to be installing bike racks in. I do want to see anytime you're creating a corral. I think if you start putting 4 or 5 bikes together, that concerns me from the standpoint of how it does fit in to EPV. So, but I don't have a problem at all with any of those suggestions, and giving you the responsibility to put them in until sometime when either we screw up or you screw up, and then we got to change it again. But I'm quite pleased with what I see.
Thank you for those comments. Commissioner Uli.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with those comments. Maybe you and I should get an e-bike and speed up and down the street
Yeah.
and see what the deal is. I also agree, great presentation. I particularly don't have a problem with the design of that bike rack, and I don't have a problem with any of the 3. I agree that it's important to have flexibility so that you can deploy the small, medium, or large wherever it needs to be. I appreciate Commissioner McClure's comment about the detail, and I believe that we should require you to do a below-grade mounting and cut the bricks back around the pipe, because this is disturbing. We see this all up and down the street. We spent an awful lot of money putting those bricks in, and then they get chopped up and filled with concrete, and it's like, why bother? So I think we would require you to do below-grade mounting and cut the bricks. These are permanent pieces of furniture. Those are very well made. They're going to outlive all of us. And so that would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Who next?
I'll go next.
Commissioner Gordon.
Again, thank you for a very useful presentation. And it left me totally persuaded that the existing hitching post is inadequate. So you accomplished that. I, again, would be comfortable with any of the ones that you showed us. My only other recommendation, although most of my questions were focused on downtown, that whatever you choose, it be consistent citywide so that there's an identity to the bike rack. Also, in any future situation in which it comes back before HLC, I will be most concerned, as I said as I led off with my questions, with the pedestrian mobility particularly for people who are mobility impaired or senior citizens. That will be if it ever comes back to us, that will be where I'm coming from.
Commissioner Butler.
Very positive. It's really great to hear your presentation. I sort of feel like you're the dog that caught the car because the demand for parking for bicycles is going to just explode. As you know, we have several projects of new residential that don't require any parking, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you're always, 583, at first I thought, wow, that's a lot. And then maybe it's not. Maybe it's really not. My question about the color was just more that, the aesthetic. Black seems a little harsh, green seems a little obscurantist. But I also would support the idea that they're all consistent. So if you're, wherever you're at, you go, yeah, I know that's where I put my bike. So, or something to make them a little more visually appealing. I know that gets into cost, et cetera. I mean, we could put a little bar across there and sell advertising on the bike racks. No, I'm sorry, I'm a marketing guy. Maybe that one. Anyway. There you go.
I get to use it.
Maybe I better stop now.
Order in the court.
But again, thank you for the presentation, the data. I was really intrigued to hear what you had to say, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I will make my comments. Oh, Commissioner Ensberg,
Thank
I
you.
kept waiting for you to pipe up, but
Well, I was waiting to hear from everybody else. So,
okay.
yes, thank you for your work and for your presentation. I understand this is not an easy thing as we're transitioning from one thing to another. We have less cars and we have more bikes. And so how we're dealing with buildings and new ADUs that have no parking and all bikes, and how do people come out of those buildings, get to where they're supposed to go, it's huge. So there's going to be even more bicycles. So I guess my concern is that I don't think that they should be on the sidewalks. I think the sidewalks, as we're doing master planning, we're trying to plan ahead. I realize you have this charge that you're doing for right now, and maybe this is the best way to go. I just would like to put it out for you to think about as you're moving through this, is that what is really the best solution? And I do understand that bicyclists are accustomed to going right to where they want and putting their bike right there and walking in the door. Just like in the olden days, you used to go in a diagonal parking and park your car and go right into the store.
or your horse.
That doesn't exist anymore. So we have to change with it. How is the best way to deal with it? And that's why I do think that the sidewalk should be exclusive aesthetically for dining and walking, and not for parking bicycles. I realize that's what we're looking at it right now. There it is. And you can imagine if there's like 2 bikes on each one of those, whether it's any one of these shapes or that shape. And I don't think it's going to prohibit people. People will still go park their bike around a tree. They're going to just do it unless you have some kind of enforcement. You're hoping that once you have these, that will happen, and we can all hope for that. So I guess I would just encourage the study of something really secure, which would be corrals in the public parking lots that really are secure, where people would go and they park their bike there and then they walk out. I think Commissioner Jordan mentioned something like that. I think that would be the ultimate best solution, which would keep all the clutter off of the street and would have a secure place for people to have their bikes. But I recognize you're kind of in a transition right now, so I want you to know I'm supportive of what you're doing and what you're trying to do. I just not sure it's really it might be an interim solution, but I don't know if it's the ultimate solution as we realize more and more bicycles. So thank you for your work, and thank you for the presentation.
I have, if I might,
You may.
I have a question, number one. Well, number two, first, a comment. Because we are not seeing automobiles in multifamily housing today, but rather we're seeing interior bike storage, that doesn't cover the need for parking for transient bikers who come to a building, they don't get inside. And I think we should be looking forward, we should be forward-looking from the standpoint of requiring some of these apartment houses to have outside parking in addition to the private parking. That's a comment. A question is, the Breakwater Cafe, you've lost a corral there. What happened to it?
We actually just reinstalled a bike corral last week at the Breakwater Cafe.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I was there on Friday and it wasn't there.
Well, they're pretty quick.
Around the tree, right?
No longer around the tree. That was blocking pedestrian ingress to the restaurant.
see.
And so we actually held it tight to the planter.
Okay.
And we will likely be expanding bike parking there as well because there's been a huge influx of demand in the harbor area.
Thank you.
Okay, my turn for comments. I'm conflicted, but, you know, I agree that this is necessary. My initial feeling was along lines of Commissioner McClure, isn't there a more traditional looking solution? But on the other hand, when you consider the coatings that you need and the cost, et cetera, and the fact that you want something that if this manufacturer goes out of business, there's another place you can get them. Those are all very valid concerns. So I would say of what you've shown, what's the green one called?
That is the Rambler Wide.
Yeah, so that would be my preference. The staple one looks like crowd control to me. And the other one is just kind of small, and I think, you know, bicycles are longer than any of these, so, you know, having them wider than that narrowest one is probably an advantage. So that would be my preferred, the Rambler Wide. And I agree with a preference towards more corrals on side streets. The objective is to minimize clutter on State Street as well as keep it clear for pedestrian and disabled access. So, you know, to look towards that solution, more corrals on side streets or in parking garages, et cetera. You know, I wish I could just pull up my car next to outdoor dining and tie it up, keep an eye on it, but that's obviously not even a consideration, but it's human nature that bicyclists will do that, and we can't always change human nature as much as we might like to. So I think there's a necessity to have some of these, but I think to the extent that there's kind of a smattering of them on State Street, more widely spaced, and then there's corrals available, then there are options, and people that don't have a problem with corrals are going to go over there, or if they see all the ones on State Street are in use, then they'll go over to the corrals. So looking at it from those perspectives, I think would be helpful. So this is a one-time pre-application consultation, so I think the comments we want to have recorded is that if at all possible, well, let's see, let me start from the beginning. We are accepting of the proposed bike rack solutions, and generally the commission was fine with all of the proposed models, so I won't specify what I like. You heard from me, but is the green the preferred color?
Wait, well,
Yes?
Chair House,
Yes, yes.
now that you have brought that up so well, I appreciate that you addressed each of them, and I agree with you. I think that that one, and I don't know how the others feel,
Okay.
but since
Is
you
there a
brought it up
preference
that
for
way.
the, whatever it is, Rambler Wide?
I think,
okay.
I agree with you.
I think
that-
there's generally a preference for the Rambler Wide, and I think there's generally a preference for the dark green, because it's the closest to Malaga, and we're not going to get a custom color in this kind of finish. And
Do we not prefer black?
I think that Commissioner Lenvick, thinks that looks harsh, or something, yeah.
I think the green is a very fine color.
Yeah.
But as the applicant has pointed out, we have approved both black and green in EPV already. So if we are consistent, either black
We
or
wanna
green is
be
going to work.
consistent.
Yeah, or want to be consistent.
Well, I mean, we can say which one we prefer, and I know when some other bike racks came before us, the ones for those rentable ones, we really would have liked them to be green, but black was the choice that they gave us, so we were stuck with that. But I think generally, our board, when we have a choice is Malaga green.
Yeah.
And then
Can we have a
it'd
vote?
be, what's that?
Can we do a straw vote?
Oh, well,
Why? Why?
I mean,
If everybody agrees on that.
I got the impression, is there, how many people prefer the darker green color? Okay, I think that's the majority.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
for doing that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And the preference would be where they're installed in the bricks, that they should be installed below the level of the bricks and the bricks cut tight to the posts. And we would prefer to see corrals to reduce the need for hitching posts, or for, what do we call them?
Racks.
Bike racks on state, and fewer of them spaced further apart on state. And like the idea of corrals located in parking garages. Anything else we need to add in our comments?
Excellent
Just-
presentation, very persuasive.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, we very much appreciate the excellent, thorough presentation.
Chair, just because we want to be sure we get the comments that we all want in the minutes, having them spaced, as we know, the bicyclists are going to park them wherever they want.
Yeah.
So spacing them out is not going to make, that's not going to reduce the number of them.
I'm not sure I agree, because to the extent there's an option of the corrals,
They won't. What they will do is if there's no one right in front of where they're going, they'll either park it, they'll put it around a
Yeah.
tree, or they'll put it on the railing of the restaurant they're going to go sit at. They will find a place that's close, and they will park it there. They will not say, oh, there aren't any, I'm going to go over there to the lot.
They put in the garage, right?
They won't do that.
Why are we advocating?
Well, if
parking in garages?
if we move in the future, if we have really good parking garages, and if we make we have a regulation that says that there is no parking of bicycles on State Street, and that you park them in the parking garage.
that's social engineering.
If that is something that happens as part of a master plan in the future, then that's why they would park there. But otherwise, they will park, as I say, I don't mean to, I just am bringing it up because I don't think that if you space them out, that will mean that they won't park.
No, I agree with you, and that is my opinion, but I will say that
Okay,
this
thank
is
you.
a one-time pre-application, so we'll be coming back for a consent where we can make additional comments after they've considered these
And
comments.
we can be, yes, we could follow up. We would bring back again the specs for the racks, because what we're hearing is those, you will see those and then in the green color, and then we can work with our engineering team on the spec with respect to the brick. Because if we were to receive grant funding and do kind of a massive purchase of racks,
Yeah, ideally.
and then put it out, everything has to be out to bid. We want to make sure the detail for the installation is what everybody wants. But another, so I think that we're happy to respond. I don't know, we can wait to the next meeting or not, as far as the corral or the bike parking in the garages. Again, there's some. Just note that the parking garages are really, it's meant for the vehicles. Vehicles are still part of our transportation network, and in the foreseeable future will also be part of our transportation network. Our garages are very much designed for vehicular entrance and exits, and they're often off of the busier streets, which is not necessarily the streets we want cyclists going down. So that has some complexity. So having everybody go to a parking garage or surface parking lot as a cyclist can not be a safe point connection to there.
Those are good points, and it's just a
Yes.
comment for you to
Yes.
study.
And,
One other
yeah, we
comment that I
can-
want to add is that when existing hitching posts are replaced, they should be replaced in groups, so there isn't a combination of different designs. grouped together.
So kind of like a block by block if we were to.
Not even
or
block by block, but if there's a group of 5.
Yeah,
and
Got
then
it,
there's a
okay, okay,
space, yeah.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
And your plan for social
Commissioner
engineering is going to
McClure.
be important.
is there any limit to the number of these things, kind of to Cass's point? Like, what if there's one every 6 feet on Center, all up and down State Street? Is there a limit, or does the city need to come to HLC on quantity and placement?
No, we generally approve the concept of the installation and leave it up to them for the quantity of them. You know, if we were hearing that they're planning on doubling the number or something in EPV, I think we'd want to know more about that, but.
This is city asset. We could only maintain so much in our infrastructure. We're very deliberate on where we have the bike parking. It's not meant to have every few feet.
Yeah, okay, we're 15 minutes behind schedule, so we will move on. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, item 4, is 221 East Islay Street. This is listed on the Historic Resources Inventory, constructed in 1923 in the English Arts and Crafts style. This is a proposal for a 2-story addition and a new basement at an existing residence. Project includes demolition of the existing detached garage, construction of a new attached garage and detached workshop and driveway extension. Project design approval and final approval are requested. The project was last reviewed on November 8th, 2023. Welcome. So give your names for the record, please, and then your presentation. Then we'll want to see the minutes from the last meeting.
My name is Serena Edelson with, am I on?
Yes.
Serena Edelson with Harrison Design, architect and studio director.
I'm Caitlin Ernest with SEPS Land Use Consulting, and I am the planner on the project.
Okay.
Edward Fisher, homeowner.
Ah, great. Welcome.
And through the chair to the rest of the commission, I do have the minutes from the last hearing pulled up on screen. As you can see, there were only the 2 comments.
Okay, the commission would be prepared to grant project design approval when the project returns, restudy the openings of the covered porch on the 2nd floor over the garage. The covered porch option is more appropriate to the architecture. That's all we said. Thank you. I guess we liked it or something.
There's an expectation now, isn't there?
Yeah.
Maybe you need a bike rack.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair House. As you stated, we were last here in November 2023, and we received very favorable comments from HLC, and we are now requesting project design approval and final approval. The project has received a lot of neighbor support, and neighbors continue to be very supportive of the project. Serena will run us through the plan set and present a few minor changes that have occurred since the last time you've seen the project.
Thank you, Caitlin. Hello, Chair House and the commission. It's nice to see everybody again. I'll jog your memory on some of the things we discussed then. As we mentioned last time, our clients, including EJ, are a local family who's young and growing. They have a new one since we were here last. And we received lots of neighbor support letters from the majority of the block, including both next door neighbors, in support of EJ and his family. So, as well as the positive comments from HLC. We'll walk you through our response to those comments and develop details and sheets, sections, et cetera, appropriate to request project design and final approval. So here's our cover sheet you've seen before. And site photos, so this is on Eastlay Street. It's an existing kind of Tudor style home. It's just lovely with neighbors, I think this is actually a helpful kind of overview here. You can see 221 Eastlay here and the majority of the block. This is the site plan. There are no changes to the site plan since our last presentation with you. The building footprint has not changed. We have civil drawings now which support that site plan, making sure that our hardscape, et cetera, is supportive of this per city requirements. Driveway sections, et cetera. This is the existing plans and demo plans. There are no changes to these things. We're not proposing any new demo than we reviewed with you last time. And the proposed addition is really just on the back leg of the home. So as you may remember, we're proposing removing the derelict garage to build a new addition to the rear. It's set behind the original structure. This is the first floor plan and second floor plan. The changes, essentially we reshuffled the primary suite so that the bedroom could have windows on two sides of the building mass facing their lovely garden. We'll see those changes on the north and west elevations. Again, both of which are on the back and inside facades. In response to the HLC's comments, we did address what was the open porch above the garage and are showing an enclosed office. You'll see the design evolution in the elevations. These are existing elevations for record and proposed elevations.
And if you could point out anything that might have changed from the last review.
Absolutely. So here you can see our proposal to the area above the garage. We studied it a bunch of different ways. We agreed that it was kind of awkward having asymmetry above the garage doors and open porch on one side. We took a look at perhaps doing some sort of sleeping porch on that front facade, and that didn't feel appropriate either. So finally we came to the conclusion that doing new windows to match existing windows, you'll see those just adjacent, is the right solution. The only changes on the rear and west facades are at the master suite. So you can see the sleeping porch here on the rear now of this master suite, which is echoing the existing sleeping porches, which are on the rear of the original structure. And then just some window shuffling at that primary suite on the second story. Again, this is on the north facade. Not visible from the right-of-way. And then the only other change is the windows here above the stair hall. I'll zoom in for you. So these are larger windows than the HLC saw last time. And we really like this window. This is a new window type, whereas the rest of the windows we're proposing are really echoing existing. But this too is a direct reference for the original stair hall windows. We're just showing fixed units with divided lights, but still the sill sitting on that belly band. So it's really just a play on the stair hall windows of the original structure at the new stair hall. There are no changes to the workshop from the last presentation, but I can zoom in on the material palette. There are two new material palette items shown, items 5 and 6. These are really just calling out paint and specifications for gutters, downspouts, and the half timbering to match existing. These photos are of the existing home. Here's the rendering showing that proposed change per the HLC's comments of the porch over the garage. We think this is a more elegant approach. As we cut sections and begin to work with our structural engineer and really make sure this works, we did understand that the center portion of the second story is going to have to raise 1.5 feet to accommodate our structure and code minimum door heights. The plate is just 7 feet 8 inches, and you can tell DJ's a pretty tall guy, so we're doing what we can. Fortunately, we feel that this is really not going to be a significant change, especially from the view of the right-of-way. The home is really set back and above, the sidewalk. It's set back quite a bit, and so we're not concerned about that ridge height. We have developed a handful of architectural details. Some of these are typical, but most are not, in that we're proposing our chimney pots to conceal contemporary spark arresters. We carefully studied the eave of the existing house, and so our eave detail is according to existing conditions, as is the proposed belly band that is studying the existing belly band such that it's matching existing. And similarly on the next sheet, which is door and window details, we did the same. We went to the house and studied the door and windows of existing and made sure that our proposed windowsills, doors, heads, etc. are in keeping with the existing. And then here are our door and window schedules. These are new to the HLC and really just reflecting the elevations that you've seen. And of course, our equipment specs, et cetera, that the planning department loves to see too.
They're so hard on us, aren't they?
Yes, exactly. So we really appreciate HLC's take. We thought it was really valuable feedback. I'm going to actually let EJ help me conclude our presentation today.
Yeah, all I was really going to say, and you touched on it, was just to remind the commission, since it was so long ago, we've worked with our neighbors pretty closely on all of it. And I think everyone on the block wrote in or called in on the day. So that was it for me. Just excited to get the project moving along.
I bet you are. Great. Thank you very much.
So thank you all. As a reminder, we're requesting project design and final approval today. Excited for feedback.
Okay, so if that concludes your presentation, we'll open public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. At this time, I'm not seeing anyone in the audience, and we also did not have any virtual participants, and we didn't receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair House.
Thank you. We'll close public comment and go to questions from the commission. Anybody? It's a good sign. Commissioner Landbeck.
Yeah, I assume the paint colors that you're proposing are what's almost matching what's there now, is that right?
It's exactly to match existing.
And I assume that the shutters are not changing. They're there now and they'll be there.
That's correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
I just have one quick comment. I very much appreciate your working with the neighbors, and they're getting comments to us. I think this is a good project. I can support this, but I think it does a lot for neighborhood cohesion on the street when you work with the neighbors. So I just want to call that out.
Thank you. Commissioner Butler.
I would support the project. I think it looks terrific. You guys have accommodated our concerns or our interests, and I would support approval of the project.
Does that mean you would like to make a motion?
No, okay. You might have other comments.
You get to make findings if you do.
Oh, joy.
Yeah. Commissioner Uli.
Thank you. Great project. Continue to support it. I wanted to speak to the large hall windows, since you had pointed out that that was a new feature. I don't have an issue with it, because the house is kind of Tudoresque. You find these very large windows in hallways and entryways, and so I think it's an appropriate application.
Thank you.
Chair House.
Commissioner Ansberg.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much it's good to see you all, and thanks for coming back. It's very inspired, and I agree with what the other commissioners have already said. I especially appreciate also your attention to the detail of the original house and how you have studied that so carefully to be sure that it all matches. And I really like the window that Commissioner Uli was talking about. I think that it sort of adds a new a piece to it that wasn't there before, but it's making a statement for now. But I think it really will be amazing when you're in the house. It's going to be a very powerful thing, and I think it really is quite beautiful. So thank you for the great work. I totally support it. And do we have a second already?
Nobody made a motion.
Oh, well, okay, I'll move for a design approval and final approval. And I guess we have to get the second first.
No, you have to.
Do I have to read all the things? Okay, I'm happy to do that,
need a
okay.
second first.
All right.
I'll second it.
Okay,
Okay.
second by Gordon.
Gosh, can I see this? Yes, that I find the project consistent with design guidelines. Do I need to read all the rest of that too?
No,
Or
just-
okay. And that it is compatible with architectural character of the city and the neighborhood, definitely. That it's the appropriate size, mass, bulk, height, and scale with respect to the addition and the piece on the back. And sensitive to adjacent landmarks and historic resources. It is appropriate for public views of the ocean and mountains that, I guess, very limited in that regard.
You can say it's not applicable.
Okay, thank you, not applicable here, if that's true. And use of open space and landscaping
Is appropriate.
is appropriate, and minor alterations to a historic resource findings. The exterior alterations are being made primarily for and will substantially advance restoration of the historic resource to its original appearance, and two, the alterations are consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards.
Oh, boy.
And to continue the grading
You
findings.
didn't spring those on the consent calendar.
The grading findings have been met as stated in section 22.69.030 of the City of Santa Barbara Municipal Code. 1, the proposed grading will not significantly increase siltation in or decrease the water quality of streams, drainage, or water storage facilities to which the property drains, and 2, the proposed grading will not cause substantial loss of southern oak woodland habitat.
Plenty of it in that neighborhood.
Great job.
Is that it?
That's it.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to keep reading.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, roll call vote.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner Dordan,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindvik,
Yes.
Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a 10-day appeal period to City Council. Thank you. And we don't normally let homeowners speak, but we made an exception this time. No. Just kidding.
Yeah. I know, they covered everything. You didn't have much to say.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see, next item is 4 o'clock. I know we're doing okay on that. Are you the applicants for item 536? Yes, okay, recognize you. So come on up.
Price
So-
is right, come on down.
Yeah, Price is Right. Okay, this is item 536 East Victoria Street, located in El Pueblo Viejo. This is a proposal for an additional floor area to 2 existing buildings on 2 separate parcels. I don't need to read all of this. Project includes a new roof deck, exterior alterations to the existing facades, 8 short-term bicycle parking spaces, and a lot merger to combine the 2 parcels. And the Historic Landmarks Commission approved the development plan on July 17, 2024. Final approval is requested. Project plans must demonstrate substantial conformance to the plans that received project design approval on July 17, 2024, not too long ago, which is when the project was last reviewed. So if you could give your names for the record and then your presentation, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys for meeting us. Lisette with ERA Architects.
And my name is Nate Evans with Tynan Group, or the owner's representative.
Okay.
And
So-
through the chair, if we could start with the minutes from last time, I have them
Okay,
pulled up on the screen
that's
so
a
then
good
they can
idea.
go through and see,
Okay,
show their
so the
address.
minutes from last time, project design approval with comments. The commission thanks the applicant for their continued work on the design. Integrate the lights over the door as downlights with an option of decorative lights. Check the accuracy of the 3D model for the height of wall above the openings to ensure it corresponds to the elevations. Suggestion to study blade signs around Santa Barbara that have been approved by the sign committee to find a blade sign that will be supportable. The window treatments / glazing should be the same for all windows. Study the bell tower, focusing on a single bell and bringing the width more in line with the pier below. Suggestion to add color variation to the pots on the Paseo side. Suggestion to add stronger color for the window frames and mullions. Add more contrast between the body of the building and the window frame color. Study the pot size for the vine on the upper level. Return with a landscape plan showing the species and pot specifications. Return with physical color samples or color board. The project compatibility analysis findings generally have been met. And the commission makes the following development plan approval findings, which are standard. Anything else?
I didn't hear you read number 8.
Is that true? Go back up. Did I miss 8? Suggestion to add solid tile underneath the windows to add more color. You are correct. My, you are observant. Okay. And that looks like it. So,
And through the chair to Commissioner Uli, did you watch the recording? Perfect, all right.
okay. Now you could give your presentation.
Yes, so basically what we did with this latest design is like we addressed the comments. So I know that you already went one by one, but if we could respond to them. The
Please
first
do.
one about integrating the lights, integrate the lights over the door as downlights. We did do that. We actually, instead of proposing lights before, we were proposing them under the trellis, since it's an open trellis. Instead, we are proposing them to be in the alcove, so they will be recessed on the stucco alcove.
Okay.
And we can see that basically, if we go straight to the electrical plan. Yeah, you can see now
Or
that.
reflected ceiling plan if you've got one.
Yes, so we can show them right here, because you can see that, there will be recess cans in
Okay.
that recess alcove that we have for both entrances, so it accentuates the entrance itself. And then we also have the wall-mounted sconces next to the entrances. If I can go to,
Fixture X.
yeah. So those, you will see them on the rendering too. I think that will be more,
Well, it's good to see the specs so we know what kind of
yes, so and
lamps.
it's actually that basically bronze finish. Let me see if it's, he doesn't, and the schedule doesn't have him, that's why we have him on the drawing instead, on the elevation drawing. Yes.
3,000 K, 20 watts, hybrid.
Yeah, and then the look of it, if
10 roof deck. Well, that's K. Was it K or X?
X.
It was X. They look similar from this
Yeah.
distance. Is there an X, or that's the end of the
Yeah,
schedule?
yes, he
Okay.
actually doesn't
It is
have
K
it
then.
especially here, right, but we have it shown on the elevation, so if I can go to that one.
By virtue of the fact that it
Instead.
says TBD, you haven't selected the actual fixture yet. I mean,
Yeah.
will it be a custom, or?
Yes, so it is a custom fixture, and that's why we have it
That's-
shown.
That's K.
I know, but I don't think there is an X, because that's the end of the schedule.
So let me
K
go
looks like an
to-
X,
Could be
reading from
Yes.
this distance.
X is the holder.
Yeah.
Is the holder. Sorry. It's right here. So you've seen it before in the same fixture on the elevation. So before we had them basically more spread into the facade, but now we're focusing to just put those type of chandeliers not chandeliers, sconces, right below, basically, right next to the building entrances instead. And then with the lights that are going to be recessed on those alcoves, we have enough illumination for the entrances to just accentuate that.
So the other day when I made a presentation at SFDB, I learned these is now a touchscreen. Is that true?
I believe so.
So
It is a
you
touch
can use two
Oh,
fingers
that's
and
great.
move around and zoom in.
Oh, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was trying to do Z and it didn't work. And it's a touchscreen now. Yeah.
The Adobe shortcuts should be enabled for your PDF, so you can use either Adobe shortcuts or use the touchscreen.
Perfect, thank you. And if we can go to the next comment, it's about the 3D model and the height of the wall. That we did scale the model. There was a little bit, the proportions were not, were not exactly per the elevation. So you can see if we open back the model here. So we did do some adjustments. The height, it was missing a foot of height. And then we did make sure that what we have on the model is the same proportions that we have on the elevations. Okay. The next one is suggestions to study the blade signs. We did remove the blade signs because we talked to the sign committee and they said that they were not supportive of the blade signs. So you will see on these revised elevations that we no longer have those blade signs on any of the sides. Okay. The other one, the window treatment glazing should be the same for all windows. We do have the same type of windows, the same type of glazing proposed on all the windows throughout the building. We did integrate also. There was a comment. I didn't get into the list, but it was proposed or suggested by you guys to divide basically the windows, the storefronts, not to be so large. So we did provide more mullions, and we did add those upper divisions on the storefronts to be more in accordance with the PV guidelines. Do you see that? Let me. I'll use the. Yes, so those divisions, and we do think it breaks the large storefronts in a very nice way. So we did do that throughout the front elevation, and then also when you turn the corner on the first, let me put the first, so there, and then you can see it, just like the storefront that turns the corner, and then the rest just has the mullions that we were showing before. Study the bell tower, focusing on single bell and bringing the width more in line with the pier below. So we did do a lot of different configurations of this bell tower. We do think that the proportion here, when you show it in this corner, in this view, it does look like it's a really large bell tower. But when you see it, when you see the front elevation, it looks like the proportion of the bell tower, that corner, with the rest of the building. It seemed to us that was the best size than to make one side smaller and the other. And when it turns larger, like this was from an inspiration, and we talked about it before on this drawing from the Pueblo Viejo guidelines. It's this one here, which does work in that location to have like a smaller section and to make them uneven. But for our building, based on the proportions, the scale of it, it just didn't work to modify it. So we did adjust it, but we're keeping the same.
Just so you know.
Right? Yes. We'll show it to the board as well right now. So you can see it. So when you see it in the front and side elevation, the proportion to us seems appropriate for the scale of the building. The next one was suggestion to add color variation to the pods on the paseo side. So that was referring to the pods on the Paseo Granada. On the previous presentation, these were all just like a clay color. And then we did add a similar color than we were proposing for the tile, and also add another of the tones that are shown on approved colors for Santa Barbara. So you will see that lime color and then the other blue that's similar to the tile. Suggestion to add a solid tile underneath the windows to add more color. So for that one, you did see a little bit too on the front elevation here. We did, we had just a base, like a band, like a tone, like a earth tone band below. But now we are incorporating this colorful tile to the bottom of it on all the sides. Let me zoom out instead so you can see it throughout the sides of the elevations. And we think that that gives it like a really vibrant, colorful accent to the building. The other, choose a brighter, stronger color for the window frames and mullions. Before, we were using a color instead of, so we had the base as a tan color, and then the color was actually on the mullions and on the frames. So instead, we think that bringing a bronze color to the frames gives that additional kind of like brightness and touch to the building, so that we can add the color instead on the base and then do the frames as a bronze. Let me see if we can zoom in into one of the images here. So this one is a little bit dark, but the colors, and you'll see it right now in the sample board that it is a bronze, a rich bronze color, and then with the contrast of the light wall and the bright tile, we think that looks like a good combination for the building. The other one, study the pot size for the vine on the upper level. So we did provide a landscape plan for this submittal, and we will see it right now. So this would be, and we are proposing a pot that it's 36 by 36 by 36, so it's a really good size to be able to actually plant and be able to grow that vine that we're showing on the elevation. So you can see here's the spec for it, and it will be a clay tile, a clay color pot. You can see the locations there and the size. So we think that that's the proportion needed to be able to grow a good sized vine that grows over the trellis. And that will be on the front elevation and also looking on the terrace side, opening into the roof terrace. Do you want me to zoom out here? And then we talked about before about the landscape that's located right behind the building. So that is because it's, even though it's city property, because it's right behind it and we are, making some changes on that wall, we are including to repair that planting, and you can see that on this landscape plan. And then the last comment was to come back with a sample board, which we have here to show to you guys. And then you can see the actual colors.
Hey guys,
Hello.
Terry Bottenfield Construction. So I just wanted to get that in front of you guys.
City TV, can you zoom in on this? I don't know which way they like it.
No, we're gonna find out.
The other way.
Yeah. And yeah, the TV doesn't do its...
Do it justice.
Yes.
Good thing we're here.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you can see the really bright color there for the tile. It's a really nice turquoise tone. The ones that you see above here are for the medallion. If you see on the front elevation.
Which are you
Here.
speaking about now, these?
Yeah, those glass tiles. And let me zoom in here into the,
On the round portion up above where the cross.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So those are for the medallion inside, and then it's right.
Oh, right there.
Yes. And then you'll see the bronze tone for the, so that will be the color for the frames, for the window, door frames, and also for the trellis.
Looks
Yes.
more like a black.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does look a little bit dark, but it is a dark bronze.
It's dark
right?
bronze, yeah, you know how bronze can look
From
more
different
bronzy or
companies,
black.
different
Yeah, it's just,
colors, yeah.
I think the intent is to get a nice bronzy color in both the window mullions as well as the trellis structure that matches. And definitely not a black, I don't think.
No, not a black.
Yeah.
That's-
Those are
These,
for that.
yes. Mhm. For just that small detail, and then, we also kind of like have that lime color that you see there are for the pots. And those two tones for the pots are in the alley side, instead of using the clay color, adding some color on that side. And then you see the roof tile
Terracotta.
too.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is the fixture on the front?
That's the fixture, yes.
Oh, okay.
That is the wall sconce. That frames every entrance.
And then the one color's the proposed building color, base building color, yeah, up there on top.
So that's a little whiter than.
Then it shows on the, yeah. Yeah, you like it that it's,
We kind of looked at some, and this is an approved color from the city, one of the city colors. The other one's got a little yellowy, creamy, and so we kind of went this direction.
yeah, that's what we thought.
Yeah.
That's what we thought when we presented the renderings, is it creates a little bit of a shadow and makes it darker, but the actual tone would help you guys visualize it.
And is the light fixture, is it dark sky compliant? Do we have to?
Well, it has a solid top, so that makes it.
Usually the lamp has to be.
It would have to be, yeah, we would make sure of that.
Yeah, it doesn't have any light going up, but then, it's kind of less of an issue in the downtown core.
Yeah.
but, It's got, not CD glass, but a little texture.
Little texture.
Yeah.
And then it will also be the bronze color. So
Mhm.
all the exposed metal will be that color.
Are we done with this? Thank you, City TV. Okay, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, that addresses all the comments. Thank
We'll
you.
open it to public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips, and I'm not seeing anyone in the audience. We also do not have any virtual participants, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair House.
Thank you. I will close public comment and open it to questions from the commission. Anybody?
Yeah, I had
Commissioner
two
Ensberg.
questions. One is, can we look at the pots that are, I think they're up on the deck. I don't know if we don't see them, do we, from below?
You would barely see them, and these renderings don't show them because it's basically more on the pedestrian level. But they are, because they're 36-inch high, and when you see actually in this view, the rendering,
You see a little
because
bit of the
you would
planting
see a
there?
little bit, yes.
So
So
that-
this particular
Can
one.
you point to it on your, is it just up above, right there?
Yeah, so you won't, like, this view doesn't show it. Yeah, because of the tilt of the view there, but you wouldn't be able, like, to see it, because it's, the solid area is only 12 inches high, so we still have some exposed railing where you will be able to see them.
Yeah, I just didn't quite understand the design of it. It looked like there's some kind of a, or unless I was missing.
It's actually just rectangular, square, it's just
Okay.
36 by 36, just
Okay.
a square.
I think when you were
pot.
looking at the top.
Yes, 36
Yeah.
tall too.
It looked
Looked
a
like
little
it.
deceiving because the plants were in there. It made it look kind of
Yeah,
funny.
that's
It's
what it
really
was.
just a terracotta
Okay,
kind of square pot, rectangular pot that is pretty good size. that
okay,
would
good. I
house-
just couldn't, I was just confused by the graphic.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
looked a
me
little-
too. Me too.
I agree.
Okay, and then on the Anacapa side, the door on the Anacapa side,
Let me go there if you like.
yeah, if you could zoom in on that, it looks like the size of the frame and the mullions look much larger than anywhere else. Is that
So
Is that
this-
existing like
Yes,
that?
that's the existing storefront, so we're keeping that, and we're just actually just painting it to match
Okay.
the frames of the rest of the building.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Those were my questions.
Any other questions? Comments?
I have a question.
Okay.
I see on your roof plan that you've got roof-mounted air conditioning equipment, but I don't see any method to screen that equipment on your drawings. And this roof is visible from a number of different locations. the parking garage, south of it, the county administration building, whether or not you could see it from the courthouse rooftop or not, I don't know, you can't. But we do require screening of rooftop equipment, and I've not seen that addressed in your plan so far.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, but generally, we would require screening so you don't see it from the street level. I mean, there are many buildings around town. If you go up in the courthouse tower, you're going to see all their air conditioning equipment.
And we also have, in many projects, sort of adapted the screening based on, as the construction goes, and you can kind of get a visual, and we come up with a.
That's the way we give approvals here as well. We just kind of wait to see how it ends up coming out, right?
Yeah.
No, I think we need to see a screening for that equipment. I mean, you're up on the roof in your outside rooftop area there, and you'll be able to look across the top of the parapet and see that equipment. And I think that we owe it to the occupants of your building to have screening on that equipment.
I don't know that there's a requirement to screen it from view of occupants in the building, but what we typically require is a section showing a viewer from the sidewalk on the opposite side of the street and make sure that the equipment is screened. Would you all agree that's what we look for?
I think that's consistent with the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we did place it that it's, that the equipment will be located behind the higher parapet, so it's closer to the
Do you have it
building.
on a plan?
Yeah, so we have it
Mechanical
here on the plan. So if you can see this area here, so the thick gray area that you see there is this section here. It's actually the tallest part of the parapet. So we place the equipment right behind it here
okay.
as well. And then we checked that the height of the equipment was lower than that section of the parapet where we're placing it behind it.
So what about those larger, there, yeah?
So those are existing pieces of equipment that we're not changing.
Ventilators of some sort?
Yeah, and they are very far from the building, well, at least
Yeah.
from the front of the elevation. So since we're keeping them, we're,
Right. And these are skylights,
yes, the
Ours,
ones with
yeah.
the horizontal lines there, these are skylights, existing skylights.
okay, so is there still a feeling they should return
Well,
with the section to make sure?
I'm
that-
surprised to hear that this commission has not sought screening of rooftop equipment in the past.
We do from the public view, but not from occupants in the
Pardon-
building.
Pardon my interruption through the chair to Commissioner Lenvick. Per the HLC guidelines, and we could even pull it up if that would be helpful. Publicly visible as defined in our guidelines is if it's visible from the public right-of-way, so not necessarily from other buildings or other rooftops. So as Vice Chair House and Commissioner Uli were stating that that's normally the HLC's discretion is public viewing.
Because if that's a package unit, those can be this tall or something, so there'd be some concern about the visibility of it, but do you have any information on the
Yeah,
equipment?
so the ones that are existing, do you mean, or the ones that I was?
The proposed ones that
The
you're
proposed ones
mousing
actually,
over right
no,
now.
so those, the height of them are below the top of the parapet
Oh,
that we have in
okay.
front of it. So
Okay.
we did confirm that.
Okay.
And that's why we also placed them there, so they're protected by the, or covered by it.
Well, I would be fine with that explanation.
I would just add that mechanical equipment should be appropriately screened.
Yeah, so we have.
So,
that in
so
our
they
comments.
they should determine if you can see it from the public way, across the street or at the corner or whatever, it should be screened. If you can't see it, then, okay, no problem.
As a
Okay.
condition. Yeah.
So I think
Do we have to say anything further? If they are the same height as the adjacent parapet wall, then clearly they're not going to be visible. Do we need to, do we just want to say what Commissioner Uli just said, that that's the regulation about it, and they're obviously meeting it?
We'll figure a way to say it in the
Or
comments.
obligated to meet it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you,
Right.
yeah, okay.
So I think we were in comments. Are there more comments?
Or question, one other question about the bell tower. Which I really appreciate that you have responded to everything that we have put forth. I just had a question about, and for some reason, our screen has been being cranky here today, so I can't
Your
see.
screen's off again?
Yeah. I agree with what you were presenting about it. I just wonder, it's very finicky. I just wonder if the arch, if it should be taller. If the, it feels a little bit, it's almost there, but it feels like maybe the arch should be raised up a bit. Feels a little squatty to me.
Just the arch itself, or do you mean that the whole,
The
just
the
interior
opening where,
arch?
opening where the bell is, that whole open space raised up to be, to make the wall above it a little thinner and make it proportionately a little taller. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yes, yes. And, but you're more concerned about the arch itself, right? Not the.
Just the opening.
Just the opening.
The opening in the corners, and I,
Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. I don't see that being a problem to elevate it just a little bit. I mean, I think the visual, I think, is still going to be okay, even if it was where it's at. You'll see the bell
It's a
through it.
minor thing, but I just think that the proportion, the
Yeah.
size of the arch,
I mean,
and then the
maybe even
thickness
6
of the
inches.
wall, maybe, yeah, maybe
even
6
just a
inches.
little bit would.
It's, I hate to even, but it is an important piece, you know, it's an important detail, and it just feels like it should just be a little bit higher, and then that wall above it a little thinner, and I think
looks a
it
little
would
bit-
feel
okay.
a
So
little.
is your screen working now?
Yeah, now it is.
So it's not a touch screen, it's a touchy screen, I guess.
It's a finicky screen.
Yeah.
So,
I would dovetail on your comment there. I'm not clear what I'm looking at. Is there a back wall on two sides to that?
Yes.
But it's open on the top.
Yes.
So that just seems like I should just see the bell and not that other wall behind there. Is there a reason for the back wall?
I think we just wanted to make it look like a bell tower and feel like it was an enclosed bell tower instead of just a
Which would
facade.
usually have a roof on it, so I mean, it just
Yeah,
kind
but
of
it-
confusing.
Instead of just a facade with nothing behind it. So to
Can you
me, it
bring up
feels like-
your inspiration photo again?
Yes.
oh, yeah, is there a light in there?
Probably.
We could put one there.
Yeah, there
No.
isn't one right now, but that could
I
be a
mean, we
good
could put a little
idea.
pin spot in there, something that lights up the bell. That's pretty easy to do.
This is inspiration
Yeah,
photo.
this is more vertical.
Well, you got one squatty one and one big one.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
She went with the
So-
squatty one.
Well, I think we're in between.
Yes.
I think as a condition, it'd be very easy for us to elevate that arch just a little bit without any problem.
But how do others feel about the back wall? I mean, looking at this inspiration photo, it doesn't seem like there's a wall behind your view of the bell, and that should just be open.
So, Mr. Chair, since I spent a couple of years at that building,
Yeah, you are familiar
You're
with
familiar
that
with
here.
it.
you know, this particular element you're using as your inspiration, the bell is in its own arch.
Right.
Right.
That's the face, and the side is more like a buttress that is metaphorically holding up the bell.
Yeah.
This is the reason why the openings are different. And the bell is hanging in the arch, not across the back of the arch, which I think is the way yours is doing it, a diagonal. So it seems to me, if you want to get closer to the inspiration image, then you would get closer to it. I would caution not copying things off the building because it's just right down the street. You know, it should be its own inspiration. And if you go back to your particular detail,
Can I comment on it just a little bit?
yeah,
I thought that the bell set back. If you look closely, we have a
On the
series
court-
of beams on ours.
yeah.
And it's
You mean on the courthouse, does it sit back?
No, ours is set back a little bit to differentiate from the courthouse,
Mm-hmm.
so that you would get the same perspective of the bell from both angles. You know what I mean? It's not
Because we
like,
had two bells, and then we changed it
Yeah.
instead to just have one bell.
so that was just our reasoning behind the back wall, the beams supporting it in the center, maybe cool little light hitting it. I think it's a pretty
Yeah.
neat little element. I do agree with maybe the arch coming up a little bit.
Because then the bell will be more visible if
Yeah,
we do
I
make
d- I
the
think
opening a little bit
That
bigger.
makes a lot of sense. Just- yeah.
I would say no light. We don't
Okay.
light up features like
Even
that.
even a subtle.
No.
No,
All right.
not
I'm
appropriate.
Good with that. I mean,
It's
Yeah.
There isn't one shown right now on the plans.
Right. And perhaps that bell needs to move diagonally closer to the corner, because right now, in your view that you're showing, I don't see much of the bell.
To be more visible. Okay,
Yeah.
bring it in closer to the openings.
Yeah,
Center it on the arch.
and I would remove the walls on the back so you can see it in profile and in silhouette, and I just don't see the need for the walls in the back, especially since you see the top of the wall, and it's like, why is that there? So That would be my feeling about it.
And Mr. Chair, was there a version of this element that actually had a little roof on it, was a little bell tower? No.
No.
It always had that mission.
No, it was always open.
So-
It was always open like that.
That's what I was going for. So if we lose the walls in the back, we would probably put a diagonal beam, kind of a heavy.
Which is what it is
running
now.
across, and hang the bell off of that
Yeah.
and lose the walls in the back.
Yeah.
That seems pretty doable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
One other thing, do you, as we're, fussing with this, do you, if you raise it up and make it taller, and then it sort of feels, I feel like it should shift over to the right a little bit? It seems, I know we talked about, I don't think you can align it perfectly, with the
With the pier below.
Yeah, with the pier
yes.
below, but I'm wondering if it should ooch over a little bit to the right.
So to be wider, like, are you just talking about the?
Just the arch, move
Just
it
the
over
arch.
to the right so it's more centered underneath that, the
This
piece
pier.
above,
So you'd have a
And then-
narrower
So you have
band
it
on the
here.
corner.
a wider band
Wider
on
than
the,
it is
wider
now.
band on the
So-
corner,
so
and
open it
then,
up the
Yeah.
other way. Open it up to the
I would
west.
disagree with that, just because if the point of moving the bell closer is to have it more visible, having both those elements wider, I think, makes it difficult to see the bell as much. And I think you don't want it close, no cigar. It needs to be different
Okay.
from what's below, as my feeling.
I
well,
think
I'll just go with the taller then.
I think the taller is
Opening,
gonna
yes.
serve a little
Definitely
bit more of a
Yeah.
purpose, actually.
opening that
Yeah.
will make it more visible too.
Yeah.
So I think that would provide that.
But not out of proportion, because we'll make a comment about that when you come back.
Yes.
Well, and the
Just,
question.
just simply making the arch taller is not going to necessarily solve the problem. The opening needs to feel right. And to me, it seems that the corner column, if you will, it's not really a column, it's an L-shaped wall, really, should be a column, so that it's holding up something, and then you see the bell in this archway. Anyway,
Probably eliminating it would be the easiest way to go.
I would agree with that.
Eliminating what?
Eliminate the detail.
Eliminate the whole thing.
This whole thing?
Yeah.
If we're
Oh, I
spending
like it.
Half an hour here trying to solve a problem that we shouldn't be working on, then it's probably not a problem we should be dealing with.
Well, I like it.
like it.
There you go.
It's a church, right? It looks good with it.
Yeah, I think one of the earlier comments
Church bell's
was,
gonna ring.
make it look more like a church.
Yeah.
That was one of the earlier comments on previous
Bell's gotta be
design.
pushed back in, it's not right at the face of the opening.
Yeah.
And all kinds of things gotta be developed here that aren't our purview.
Well, I think you heard our comments, and I think this could either return to full board for final approval again, because I think that's something we can't just condition and leave it at that, or it could return to consent. So it depends upon what
I
the,
mean, to me, what we've gone through
this is a
here-
question of the
All right.
commission. What's your feeling?
I'm happy for it to come back on consent, and with the comments that we made, and
Okay.
we'll see where they go with it, and I'm happy with that.
Okay.
I suppose I would be happy with that if the consent reviewers are comfortable seeing what they see, and if they're not, then you got to bounce it to the full commission.
Yeah, I think I understand. Well, I mean, it's going to take you the same amount of time whether you come back to consent or you come back to full board, isn't that correct?
We do have a little more open space on consent than full commission, so I'm sure the applicant would prefer consent. So if you, as a commission, feel comfortable with the consent reviewers taking a look at it with
I
your
understand what
comments.
the issues are, so.
All right.
I'm comfortable with consent.
Okay. All right, so you had a comment or question?
Well, I'm just trying to understand, coming back to consent, does that still allow us to move forward with submitting building plans?
If we give you
Because-
final approval, we can't make you come back another time for something else. We can make conditions for staff to verify.
Correct.
But you can submit to building at risk, I mean, usually, no?
So you could only do that if you were receiving final approval today. So it sounds like the commission isn't comfortable giving final approval with conditions today. If the commission felt that their comments were minor enough that they could make those comments conditions of approval and make them very specific, that they could be checked on a staff level, then we could get final approval today. If you want to look at it again, then you would need to continue it with comments.
So is it never possible to submit at risk to the building department?
At risk is if you receive final approval, but it's still in the appeal period.
Can we, I would feel comfortable with giving them final approval with conditions.
If you feel like you can articulate specific conditions, and it sounds like the applicant is eager to move forward with building permits.
What's the
so-
pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, may I offer some way on this particular thing? If it's simply raising the height of the arched opening on both faces, could we have a straw indication as to whether or not the commission felt that was sufficient to solve the problem? And if so, that's very specific and staff can check it when it comes back to them.
I think you're right, and if we add to that, move the bell so it's more visible from both the archways.
These are very specific things staff can check.
Okay, everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Who would like to make a motion for final approval with the conditions I'll articulate?
I'll move for final approval with the condition that the arch be raised up.
In the bell tower element.
On both sides of the bell tower, and that the, do we want to say exact amount that it get raised up? Say, 6
We don't know.
inches?
How tall is it right now?
Let me put in.
Yeah, what are the dimensions?
Dimension drawing of that. Or a detailed drawing
Yeah,
somewhere?
I have this one here.
I mean, even if it came back and you guys wanted a little more from a staff.
No, they'll.
That almost looks taller right there.
They don't match.
That looks different.
Yeah.
Looks a little bit,
This
yeah.
loo-
it's a
This
little
looks
bit
more like
skinnier
what we're
here.
talking about, so maybe we don't.
This is like automatic
Maybe
correction.
it's
isn't it?
Yeah.
We asked for it and
Maybe
it
it's
shows
just
up
the
on a drawing.
rendering. Yeah,
The rendering
doesn't
process
show it.
brought it down a little bit,
Yeah,
yeah.
this looks right to me. So I wouldn't have that condition.
I mean, it doesn't actually have a dimension for the height of that arch, but
It would be scalable, and,
Yeah.
you know, we do have a dimension for the overall
yeah.
height.
Okay.
If this is an issue of the view of the model versus the elevation, could it be, say, the staff has to confirm that it matches the elevation drawing?
And it's always elevation.
And if it matches the elevation drawing, it's approved.
Yeah, and usually the rendering is not part of the building
Right,
set, or is
okay.
not required as part of the building
Is
set,
that
as long as we
specific?
have the
So then,
proportions well here.
So I would move then to approve, for final approval, based upon confirmation that the working drawings, the elevation is confirmed to be, what?
We could
Per-
make the
per
condition, that the arch and the bell tower match the elevation drawings rather than the simulation.
And what's
Okay,
the
thank
sheet
you.
What's the sheet number?
I'll give it to you right now.
And are we comfortable with the bell then where it is shown here?
So it's
Yes.
sheet A3.1 and A3.2.
Okay.
And, Mr. Chair, I think we would reference the elevation name rather than the sheet, because the sheet number could change.
Good.
Okay.
And
It should be the Anacapa.
Anacapa Street, and also.
And Victoria.
And Victoria
Yeah, 'cause that's the
Elevations.
Corner.
Okay. And so one additional condition in that motion would be to verify that the equipment, rooftop equipment is screened from view from the public right-of-way.
Correct.
Yes,
You good with condition number?
yes. Thank you.
And was there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so motion by Ensberg, second by Gordon, and with those conditions, and we'll have a roll call vote.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Butler,
Yes?
Commissioner McClure,
Here, yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And we're right on time, too.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
the dialogue, appreciate that. It was great.
Could have gone sideways there.
Oh, yeah, that's fun. We like,
That I would like it to be a little bit lighter.
yeah,
Than it is.
cool.
Yes.
Thanks.
Had it all, it just
Yes, it's just the rendering sometimes
It's
does
hard to,
alter
you know,
something, yes.
how it is, but
Thank you.
thank you
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item 6, is 3204 Calle Piñon. This is listed on the Historic Resources Inventory, constructed in 1926 in the Craftsman style. This is a proposal to demolish an existing garage, shed, and laundry room and construct a new addition and garage attached to the residence. Includes a new side porch, terrace, and deck, as well as tree removal, roof replacement, driveway replacement, and interior remodel. Project design is requested. Project compatibility findings and minor alterations findings are required. There was a historic significance report. So, when she gets out of here, have a seat, give your names for the...
worked here. Sorry, I just came from my kid's school. So
Oh, okay, that's fine.
I just did not.
Your names for the record and then
Kate
your
Svensson,
presentation.
designer for the project. This is the homeowner.
Hi.
How are you? Okay. I always struggle with this. Okay, it's gonna give you a quick overlook.
It's also a touch screen, so you can touch it.
Use your fingers
Really?
to move and, yeah.
Oh my God.
Isn't that amazing?
This is great. I wish my computer did that. Okay. I don't, so, oh, that's loud. We have about 1350 square foot house that is, that we're trying to expand a little bit, as you can see on the site plan. Oh, it doesn't drag. How do you drag?
Well, with a hand tool there, or,
I'm just gonna do that.
yeah, maybe two
Doesn't do that.
fingers and just drag, yeah.
So we're trying to expand it basically towards the back of the house and the side of the house. The existing garage structure is failing completely. The garage is leaning, so in our kind of attempt to put everything back together, we decided to move the garage closer to the page north of the property and relocate the driveway and the apron, and then enlarge the kitchen and add another bedroom with a bath on the rear side. As well as expand this area in the front and add a little bit of a porch in front of the main entry and the kitchen for just use of the outdoors. So the house is already pretty backed up towards the rear, so we're kind of trying to move most of our main addition towards that area and not increase the presence along Calle Piñon and Calle Alamo. So, oh, actually, I should touch on that. So you will see on the survey, here's a palm tree that is currently kind of in the middle of the driveway, on the side of the driveway. So during this whole remodel and addition, we actually proposing to remove this palm tree. This is where the new drive will be going. We got approval from everybody on the removal of the tree, and it was supported by the neighbors as well. So I'm just going to skip through demo plan. Okay, so the hatched area represents the area of addition and remodel combined, so it's not just the addition. So as you see, the new driveway will serve a full-size two-car garage, and then the front of the house that's facing Calle Alamo is now a bigger kitchen and a little bit of an attached laundry mudroom on the back, and this is the master suite that we added on the rear with a bathroom, and we enlarged a little bit of the guest bedroom on the back just to give a little bit more space to allow us to have another ensuite bathroom. And this is the covered porch that's servicing the dining room and the front entry. So we've tried to give this house a little bit more of a presence from the Calle Alamo Street. Technically, the main entrance is here on Calle Piñon, but it doesn't look and read like the main entry. So we basically switched the front door and the main entry look to the Calle Alamo side of the house. Let's switch to elevations. Actually, probably I should show you the roof plan. So we work with existing roof structure and kind of basically extended existing ridges and followed the slopes to kind of keep the character of the house the same. This area of the house is the new covered porch that we kind of tried to build into the existing roof structure and make it graceful. And this is the covered porch that services the main door, so it's a little bit stepped more forward than the rest of the roofs and gives it a little bit of a main entry feel. So this is the look of it. We reproduced the same columns that the original front side of the house had. This is all existing structure, so basically the look of the house kind of starting to change from this line. This is the sliding door serving the deck, and this is the new front door. This is the kitchen, so we added the row of transom windows above the existing windows and new garage at the new driveway. So it felt like we were getting a little bit more of a grander feel to this craftsman home by adding this covered area and covered porch and walkway. And these elevations didn't change. Well, this is the existing east elevation, so you can see the difference between the two houses. But the south elevation, we didn't change at all. And so that will be now the new look from Calle Piñon. And this is the new look from, this is the new look from Alamo. Calle Alamo?
That's Alamo, yeah.
Yeah. And this is the rear elevation. It's facing a super small backyard where we added the master bedroom and extended the existing bedroom and bathroom towards the back. So this is just basically facing a 6-foot yard on the rear. And, oops, this is the other elevation from the garage side where you see a portion of the existing or proposed master suite. So, where's your sheet? There you go. So this is the color scheme. We kind of went for a couple of rounds with the historian at the city to get to the colors that seemed to be more appropriate. We had a slightly lighter color scheme proposed originally that wasn't supported, so we kind of went back to more subtle and darker colors for craftsmen, considering the exposure of this house to the both streets and being pretty visible considered it's on the raised grade from the street level, so it's pretty visible from the street. And we are exchanging windows and doors for new ones, but they're all going to be craftsman style, just dual pane, nicer windows. And we were asked, actually on the elevation from Calle Alamo, we were asked to not modify the location of windows and doors, so we revised our plans during the completeness determination to keep them where they are. And we switched the design for the wood door in that process to have a little bit less glass than was originally proposed. And this is our color scheme for main color and windows and doors. So the driveway, which is now, obviously getting removed, we're proposing this stamped concrete pattern in lieu of pavers, just to save on the construction costs, but make it lighter and a little bit more colorful and pick up from the colors of the main residence. And all the accents of the brick, we're basically reusing the existing chimney materials type to make it look like it's been there forever. So I think that's it. And there was another PDF that I saw, I think that one, to show you the photos. Why did I zoom in?
That's the Alamo side.
There we go. So that's the existing structure right now. That's the garage that's failing. You can see how this doesn't look like it's a front door to the house, which is why we changed that. So the existing driveway and the palm tree that is going away. And is this the shed?
These are really old photos.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the existing building with a single bathroom and sink. Which is
going
I don't even, it's very, peculiar.
We were actually surprised it was deemed historic because it didn't look that pretty. But we're trying to make it prettier. So that gives you an idea of what this, and that's the brick I referred to earlier that we tried to replicate all over the structure. That's the Calle Piñon side that we're basically keeping untouched and just extending on this side of the property. It's just to look from the corner of the lot and surrounding properties in case you want to see any of them. How many photos did you put in?
I don't know, that's a really old photo.
Okay, I'm just gonna, I think we're done here. So that's about it.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, thank you.
I will open it to public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I'm not seeing anyone in the audience, so we don't have any virtual participants. We also did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I will close public comment and open it to questions from the commission. Who wants to go first? No questions.
Chuck.
Okay, we'll go into comments then.
Okay, I'll have one question.
Okay.
So the color that we saw now, you're changing it?
Yeah.
It's kind of a.
Green,
Yeah,
greener
so you're
now.
going to, and that was, you worked with the historian to.
With
come up
Nicole,
the-
yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
I had a question. On this east elevation, there's that big sliding glass door. Is that existing?
It is.
Have you thought about changing that out to be something that looks like it belongs on a craftsman house?
We were hoping to make it a little more modern, so I think this is as non-modern as we could keep it, but what would be more craftsman and
Yeah.
glass?
A pair of French doors of some sort, or
With side lights?
all sorts of different possibilities. Also on your, I don't know if it was south or north elevation, you've got some other sliding glass doors, it looks like, that are new perhaps? Yeah, those.
That's the rear elevation,
And
yeah.
those are sliding doors?
Correct.
I'm just wondering why you didn't consider swinging pairs. I mean, those would be more craftsman and traditional.
I think this was just keep the more space in the room, because this backyard is so shallow, and we didn't really want to swing inside the room. So we're just preserving the space, basically. There's almost no backyard, unfortunately.
Yeah, and those are on the back of the house, so I'm
If-
just asking
yeah.
the question.
They're facing the fence, essentially.
Are there any other questions? If not,
I have a question.
Okay.
Regarding the windows that are, the large new windows that are into the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Are those openable?
They're double hung.
Even that center one?
No, the side ones are double hung,
Okay.
and this is the fixed
Sure.
transom, yeah.
Thank you.
okay. Comments?
I like it. I think you've done a very good job about combining the new features that you want to add to your house. I agree with your description of moving the real front door to the side. Unless you're entering the property through that wonderful, inclined stone wall through steps or something, it doesn't make any sense to go around the corner to go in the front door, so.
Especially with the garage being here.
So I like your treatment with it. I'm not particularly concerned about the sliding doors. The detailing of the door can make it look like it is a hinged door instead of a sliding door, and I agree that, hinged doors, even though I have a whole lot of hinged doors at my house, they chew up the floor. I mean, you can't have anything in front of it. But I think you've done a wonderful job in integrating your changes.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Mr. Chair, so you'll take out that palm tree, will you put back another tree or have a formal landscape proposal? Or?
We'll certainly plant some landscaping for sure, because currently the site lacks some, but as a requirement for remove the tree, we were not requested to plant another tree.
Okay, but do you think you'd like to?
Like another palm tree, you mean?
Well, no, just some
Oh, yeah,
kind
for
of
sure,
tree,
we
maybe
would definitely plant some trees there, yeah.
craftsman-esque type tree, leafy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Any other comments?
Yes, Chair Grumbine.
Excuse me?
Grumbine, sorry. Sorry. It's the end of the day. Sorry about that. I like the project too. I agree with Commissioner Uli, and I think it just feels really like a nice craftsman house. I'm not terribly bothered by the sliding, but I think it would be prettier if it had a French door, maybe one French door and side lights on either side or something. I think it would be prettier, but it doesn't, when you were showing the renderings, it seemed to work well, but that's just the only piece. Did the windows that are on either side of the fireplace there, are those existing? Okay, all right. Because they would be nice to have some mullions in them as well.
Yeah,
to
this
just
is-
go with the full craftsman look, but,
And we can certainly do that in exchange, but we were asked to not touch this elevation too
oh,
much in
okay,
terms of.
yeah. Well, then there was good reason for it, but I think you've done a great job, and it's going to be a really nice, improvement. Thank
Any
you.
other comments? Okay. Oh, you have a comment?
No,
I was
I was
just-
going to make a motion.
Okay. Well, yeah, we can certainly make a motion for project design approval. I would certainly like to see you do something about the sliding glass doors on the east elevation, just because to have your new entry door, and then right next to that is a sliding glass door, just looks very strange. So I think Commissioner Ensberg's suggestion of a French door with side lights is better than two French doors side by side. So please consider that.
Okay. Can we do, am I allowed to ask a question?
Sure.
Can we do, just because I'm concerned with the swinging space of a French door, because there's going to be furniture on that covered porch, and I'm worried that it'll shift and not fit. Could we do potentially a sliding door or even a bifold door that kind of looks craftsman, wood? Can we add a detail? Is there a way to do?
She hasn't eaten all day. Don't listen to her. We'll make it look right.
Okay.
Make it look right.
Is there a way to do a sliding door that has less of a sliding door feel
Yep,
and
yep.
more of a craftsman?
Yep, we'll do that. Yeah,
That.
yeah, good. Okay.
You study it and come back with
Yeah.
another solution.
Got it.
And it could swing in, or it could swing out, or if it's
It
sliding.
could be
then-
3 equal panels or
Right.
something, and the one on the side could be the operable or something like
Yeah,
that.
there's all sorts of
To
different
work
ways
with
of
your
doing it.
flow.
Problem solve it
Yeah.
to look more craftsman. Got it.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out.
Architectural.
Okay, you care to make that motion?
Sure. I'd move project design approval for 3204 Cali Pinon, and I know I've got a whole host of findings to make. Or just a few of them, anyway.
Just to, before we get into the findings, is the only comment that you want included in the motion is to consider replacing the existing sliding door with French doors or something more craftsman?
Yes.
Okay,
To study that element to be more craftsman.
gotcha,
And also to come back with a landscape plan.
gotcha.
Was that Commissioner McClure's suggestion? A
Well,
landscape
he
plan
asked
or?
about what was going to be planted, so I think we need a landscape plan to see what they're proposing.
Good enough. The commission finds the project is consistent with design guidelines, compatible with architectural character of the city and the neighborhood, that its size, mass, bulk, height, and scale is appropriate to the project, that it is sensitive to landmarks and historic resources that it's near, including itself. Public views of the ocean and mountains are not an issue, and use of open space and landscaping is appropriate once there's a landscape plan.
Okay. Roll call, please.
No.
I've got to keep going.
Oh, no.
Just one more, this is the last one, I
yeah.
swear.
No tree removal or grading plan
Yeah.
or?
That the commission finds that the exterior alterations are being made primarily for and will substantially advance restoration of the resource, and that the alterations are consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
And pardon the interruption, Vice Chair House, we don't have a second. for that.
Second.
Wow, okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Limpick,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank
And
you.
also, I voted yes.
Nice work.
I voted yes on items 5 and 6. You didn't call my name.
I didn't?
No.
I apologize. I will include you as a yes.
I've had a rough day here.
Exactly.
You showed up with no seat.
And just as a note, this starts the 10-day appeal process for project design approval, so.
Yes, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.